Hi, Mark.
Hey, good morning. Good afternoon, Courtney. How are you?
I'm good.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah. Yep. I was just
where did you
designing
go?
my townhome on City Modern.
There you are.
Yep, you froze.
And can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Excellent.
Hi,
Joshua,
Mark.
how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Excellent, thank you. You're in school today?
Just like every day?
It looks like you're at the office.
Yeah.
Where do you work?
Going to look remarkably similar to mine.
Where could you repeat that? Where you said you worked?
THA Architects.
Where are they?
It's in Flint.
Oh, cool. Good. So yeah, this isn't that where Timothy works? Timothy Miller?
Not sure who Timothy is, but that's where Eric works.
Oh, right. Okay, gotcha. I gotcha. So have you taken an online studio before?
No, I haven't. I'm very interested in to see how this works.
It works just like this. Courtney, have you taken one of these yet?
No.
Are you going to be active in AIAS this year?
Sure am.
Awesome.
Already
Well, I'll
have
bring
one.
another check to you guys in the fall. I guess that we're in the fall now, but the next time I'm on campus will probably be for the Distinguished Alumni Award winner, and so maybe I'll run into you that evening. Although it's probably on a Thursday, so I don't know how I'm going to make that. But in any event, as I mentioned to you in my email, that I'm missing everything because of Thursday classes. But
Yep.
That sounds good. And you and Josh have not taken the studio yet online.
No.
You're in fourth year, Courtney?
Yeah.
You are.
Mm-hmm. This is my last semester.
Okay, and then Josh, what year are you in?
I think I'm classified as a senior, but
Gotcha.
I'm a transfer. So.
Where did you transfer from?
Baker College.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. So you're my third Flint student in the last year, which is kind of an interesting phenomenon. Everybody's got your city on their radar for obvious reasons, but it's really exciting to see Lawrence Tech drawing students to join us from the Genesee County. So good on you for that.
Thank you.
And it looks like someone else joined us. Hey, Eric, how are you? Good to meet you.
Good, how are you?
Excellent, thank you. Eric, can you remind me where you live and where you're working?
I live in Lapeer and I work in Flint.
Awesome. So that's four students from Flint in the last 9 months. Wow, that's very interesting. So Lapeer. I don't think I've been up that far. Is that north of 69?
A little north and east of 75.
Right, gotcha. I think I've only been up as far as Metamora, so I sort of know where that part of the world is. Well, welcome to the class.
Thanks.
Trying to click on you, Andrew. How are you tonight?
Good. How are you?
Excellent. Andrew, what year are you in, and where are you coming from tonight?
Living in Southfield still, and fourth year.
Awesome. Let's see. Well, we're a little early, so it took me forever just to invite everybody to the class because I had to type all the names in. manually, but I will certainly make it the next 10 minutes less painful by giving you a chance to go get a cup of tea or a glass of water or whatever floats your boat to get settled in, and then we'll get started. Andrew, are you working in an office right now as well?
No, my room.
I assume everybody got the materials that were posted on Blackboard?
Yep.
Just give me a thumbs up.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Nancy, how are you tonight?
Hi, good, thank you.
Where are you coming from?
From Texas,
Where in Texas?
Mission, Texas.
Excellent. Welcome to the class. And what year are you in school right now?
Well, actually, this is my second semester in the master's degree program.
Are you in the graduate program?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Lynn, how are you tonight?
I'm very well. How are you?
Thank you. You're in
Yes.
Ottawa? Good, thank you. Rasha, how are you tonight?
Good, how are you?
Fine, thank you. You're going to need to put a light on in front of you so that we can see you. Right now you look like a silhouette. That's better, thank you. Alexandra, how are you?
Good, can you hear me?
I can barely hear you.
Can you hear me now?
That's better. That's better.
Okay.
Yep. You get a little like drafting dot, a little tape, and this tape it to your
Probably.
chin.
No, it's fine.
That'll work.
I'm doing good though.
And you're in Orlando?
Yes, I'm in Orlando.
One more time, yes?
I'm in, yeah.
Okay, good, thanks. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We still have 5 more students to go. This is one big class.
When your microphone's muted, I don't think it needs it.
Yeah, what?
When your microphone is muted, I don't think it needs it. If you have an earpiece, so
Yeah, the echo on Tuesday was driving me crazy. Everything was in stereo.
So I'm just looking. Okay, Luis is here. Or he was. We're missing Michael Mosley, Paige Chorkey, Fernandez, Wu Liu, and Luis Gaitan. Oh, Luis is here. Hey, Luis, how are you? Where are you from? Can you hear me, Luis?
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah.
Where are you from?
Originally from Mexico.
One more time.
Mexico.
Excellent. Well, we've got one more minute till the next couple come in. If any of you know those individuals, that includes Michael Mosley, Paige Chorkey, and Wu Liu, feel free to contact them. They were invited. Text them or email them directly. If you all would mute your own microphones right now, we won't get any reverb or repetitive conversations. We'll begin now. Welcome back to the 2017 fall semester at Lawrence Tech University. My name is Mark Farlow. I am delighted to be here tonight because it marks yet another year of teaching for me at my alma mater, and it's also an exciting semester for me because in many ways this is an entirely new experience for me in terms of the class and the content of it, but in some ways, because I've taught this class before, it will be familiar and especially rewarding in that particular way, because it'll be reminiscent of the people I interacted with then and what we're talking about today versus back then. We have a lot of ground to cover. I hope all got a chance to look at the documents that we posted on Blackboard. Those documents include, okay, well, let me send Michael another one. Hold on a second. His invitation was posted. Thank you for the heads up. Yep, that's the one I gave him. I trust that you all had a chance to go to Blackboard for our class and look at, download, and print, and certainly peruse carefully the course syllabus, which I posted on Sunday evening. That's the multi-page document that reads to be a very technical sort of document. Then today, two new documents came your way. The Site and Building Program document, it's a multi-page package with drawings as colored drawings at the rear, which describes the site, as well as the building program, which is a narrative. And then module one's, the first assignment, which is the research topics, which is all space, all narrative. So if anyone has not gotten those, I encourage you, while we're talking tonight, to download them and to get right into it. Not only is this an interesting class for me to be involved with you for this semester, okay, is anybody else having audio problems besides Nancy?
I'm also having audio problems. It cuts in and out.
Okay, is that any better if I hold the microphone closer?
It's fine right now. It seems very sporadic, so it's not really an issue.
Okay.
It just cuts out occasionally. So
Okay, so I'll try to be clear and certainly loud enough. Nancy, can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear this since you reported it first? Can you hear me, Nancy? Your microphone is off, so if you can hear me, if you can hear me, just give me a thumbs up. Okay, I'm gonna text her. So Nancy, if you can hear me, just give me a thumbs up or a not yes. Okay. Oh, never mind then. So we have Carmen, she's in the class now. And I see that Wu is here. Good evening. Can you hear me okay? Super.
Yes.
Thank you. So again, there is there is a really interesting scenario playing out for this studio. The Comprehensive Design Studio is a requisite studio for our fourth year level students. And I am excited to be able to teach this studio because for the longest time, many of the core faculty alone have had the sort of opportunity to lead this effort, lead this studio. And so for someone like me, an adjunct with the university, to be able to come in is actually very exciting. I would also mention that there are 13 students I've learned enrolled in this class. There are, in other words, 2 sections, 13 students, which comprise both an undergraduate studio and a graduate level studio. There are more undergraduates registered in this class than there are graduates, but it is a blend of all of these sort of levels. And I think that will make the class very exciting indeed. So I'm looking forward to the interaction between the students at all of these sort of capacities and all of this sort of experience, the emerging experience, as well as maybe somewhat tested experience. I want to welcome Michael to the session. How are you, Michael? Good to see you.
No, I'm
Played
Ash.
golf with your mom and dad the other day. And Ash, good to see you again. Welcome to our class. Dr. Ragheb is our lab professor for these 2 sections. He picks up on Tuesday and Thursday nights after the normal studio sessions end. So he has an entire package of experiences for you that will be stimulating and interactive and educational, as well as the studio that I will be helping him run this semester. I'm going to let all of you weigh in just a moment, but I want to give you hopefully some money's worth. I want to make sure that you understand that they didn't just call up some buddy like me to come in and teach a class because no one else, was able to or wanted to. I have made, I think, a manifest commitment to working with the next generation. I'm very passionate about your ascension into the profession. I'm very passionate about that to the extent that I work very closely at my own office to bring in emerging talent when I have the ability to do that. I have made a career not only of practicing architecture, and I'm very, very old, and so that kind of experience must be understood against the sort of arc of years that I've been doing architecture and teaching. But I've also been teaching for a long time. I've been teaching since 1983, which is almost BC, which is before computers. But for me, that number is important because it helps me say that I'm approaching 35 years of teaching architecture to graduate level students, mid-level undergraduate students, and my earliest years teaching involved teaching at the foundation level, which is in the first and second year levels of architecture. So I've had the opportunity to work with many different levels of experience from the student perspective. And I've also had the privilege of teaching both studios, seminars, and lectures. And here at Lawrence Tech, I've been invited and privileged to teach several independent studies, which are usually spin-offs of the studios that I teach. Like I said, I've been teaching since 1983. That career in teaching began when I started my graduate studies at the University of Cincinnati. A lot of this you can read in the studio brief, but I'll try to cover some of the highlights just so that you are hearing it again from me. I began teaching at Lawrence Tech with an invitation from the dean, what was called Architectural Design 5, which was the capstone studio, the very studio that you're in now. During the fall semester, it was a studio that had about 10 students in it, and the parameters were fairly comparable then to the ones that exist for you today. That is, that in that studio, as well as today's studio, you will be given a site, you will be given a program, and you will be asked to design a building that, well, works, that functions at a high level at all of the sort of food groups, right, that we expect students to understand as would-be architects, from context and site design to aspects of sustainability, planning, structural design, structural framing, to sensitive building enclosure strategies, to life safety issues, and on and on and on. So in many ways, this is a studio that deals with the many and the multifarious aspects of architectural design in a somewhat compulsory way, so that you must necessarily touch on and excel at all of the things that we're asking you to focus on, not just on, say, design, not just on, say, siting, not just on, say, structural systems. You may be good at any one of those things, and good on you if you are, but you will be asked to demonstrate competency in all of these systems for this studio, in order to sort of move forward and ascend into the next into the next levels of studios. So I think it bears some mention too that I am no stranger to the online studio environment. I've been teaching online here at Lawrence Tech in this format, and then in a format very early on, and actually in 2010 it was kind of equivalent to a couple of soup cans and a string, and that's how we communicated virtually here online. But we've moved up to this Google Hangouts, and I'm delighted to see that the software has now allowed us to add as many as 20 students or visitors into the classroom as we as our class sizes grow and become more popular. As I said, I've been teaching online since 2010. I was one of the originators of the online graduate studio at Lawrence Tech, Glenn Leroy told me, this is true, I don't know, but that I'm the very first professor of architecture to teach an online graduate studio in the continental USA. So I was very pleased to sort of know that I was a rookie at something, even at my maturing years. And I was also privileged to earn from the university the Teaching and Learning Using Technology Award back in 2013. This is an important award for the Architecture College because it clearly demonstrated that an online class was not just a way for us to teach you something and for you to sit there passively and learn it, but it was, I think, exciting to the provost and the president that a highly immersive and stimulating and interactive studio that was conducted synchronously, that is to say, in real time with you in the room with all of us, that was very exciting for them. And I think that's probably why that award was conferred to me. And I'm very honored to have that piece of hardware. But it's really an award for the college, and it's an award for the online experience that all of my students up to that point had endured. And I think it's an award for the adjuncts as well, because many of us who teach part-time do so not, and I'll be very clear about this, not to make money. We don't do it to make a living. We do it because we have a love and maybe a belief that what we know is something that could and should be shared. And so in many ways, teaching is part of an ethic that at least the online faculty have, and certainly that I possess. Wow, so I've been practicing since 1988, but worked in architecture firms while I was a student like you. So, you know, back in the 1970s, when everybody had long hair, I actually worked in an architecture office, creating in a way my own work study kind of program. I worked for 2 years at a small firm in Southfield called Hua Yi Associates, a retail commercial office building architecture firm. And I was literally a college student learning how to draw and making money so that I could pay my own way through school, for which I'm very excited that I was able to do that. And then I worked for almost 1 year at Gunnar Burgertz's office, who, if you read arcdaily.com and Dezeen.com or any of the magazines, or even if you follow me on Twitter or LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram, because I have a fairly active social media presence, you would have learned that he passed away earlier this week. He was a mentor of mine for the very short time that I had to work with him. And just last week, my wife and I were on vacation, which is actually why class starts tonight and not Tuesday night. And one of the things I did was I dragged her to the Purchase, New York, the Purchase College campus in Purchase, New York, a somewhat banal and large big campus, not unlike our own campus, of magnificent buildings. Actually, they were good buildings, minor works, but by magnificent architects. And I had never seen the Burgertz piece there, the School of Dance building there. So I asked my wife to indulge me, and I conducted a full tour of all of the buildings there, but particularly moving was to see the Burgertz piece, which when I was in college, like you, was on the cover of Architectural Record the month that it was released. Yes, we read Architectural Record back then. So I've been teaching, I've been practicing since '88, from 1992, before most of y'all were born, until around 2014. I have beagles that are very animated, so you're going to hear them every now and again. I was a principal with Victor Soroki and Associates, located in Birmingham. I was a principal there, and what's interesting about that experience, what's interesting about that commitment, if you know Victor, of course, he's on the board of trustees of our university, is that he was a classmate of mine. And so I really relish the idea that, you know, through the interactions found here in school, in our classes, in our studios, that we can bond with people that, because of these shared experiences, because of these mutual field trips and homework assignments and design studios, that we actually can know someone very, very well intimately from a sort of professional level, and embark on a really full-throated career with that classmate. So, you know, I'm very appreciative of that time. But I will add that that time became somewhat of an adjustment for me in 2014, when I was being pestered by a number of firms to consider joining them. And ultimately, the invitation that was for me the most compelling was to serve as the director of design at Hamilton Anderson, located in Detroit, where I've been privileged to be there for about 3.5 years now. We're doing some very exciting work. I've grown the firm by 42 people. Let's see, we're doing some work in Detroit, which, if you know anything about Hamilton Anderson, that is sort of what we do best, mend the city, one neighborhood and one building at a time. And it's the work that we're doing that has been, in effect, the impetus for our own studio experience for you this semester. More on that in a moment. So you may not know much about me. I'm just a hired gun. You know, I come in and teach these studios and get you all wound up. Again, I don't do this for a living. I do it because I love it and I believe in it. And I think that energy has translated to significant in my own professional career. Last year, I was selected as the Distinguished Architectural Alumni. That rock is behind me there. I actually gave the ARCA lecture in September, and if you are partial or prone to insomnia and you want to waste an hour and 10 minutes replay that lecture. If you were hoodwinked or coerced to attend that your lecture last year, I apologize to the university for doing that. But in any event, that was an important award for me, because it touches on my commitments not only to the students, but to community service through not only agencies like the Rotary Foundation, but also through the architecture profession and through my teaching. So my award, I think, recognizes those three themes, which are very important to me. And then last year, you may know that the Henry and Barbara Holt Top Teaching Award was awarded to me, and I'm just kind of overwhelmed that all of that happened. So 2016 was a really cool year. The 2016-2017 was awesome year for me to teach. As a result of the ARCA lecture in September, I got an invitation from former faculty members here at Lawrence Tech, who now run the program at Ferris State University, to lecture there. So I spoke their fourth-year capstone studio project, a project whose scale, whose heft, whose sort of thematic intentions align so closely to our comp design studio here at Lawrence Tech that it's almost uncanny that the dean asked me to consider teaching the studio with you this semester, and I'm privileged to do that. And then just to finish up a little bit about the the teaching and practicing acumen or history that I have, I don't necessarily I don't necessarily know how to say this, except that I've been blessed with over 22 architecture and interiors and planning design awards from entities like the Construction Association of Michigan, the Congress of New Urbanism, the MIDEA, the AIA Michigan, AIA Detroit. You know, and none of those awards are for one individual, but they are all for projects that I designed or had a major impact on and role in that design. Of course, any design for any building is much more complex than the contribution of any one individual. And maybe the semester spirit. Farlow, give the microphone to Ash for a second to let him explain a little bit about his very, very impressive background and his responsibilities in our studio. And Ash, I'll let you hold the mic.
Thank you, Mark. I think I know some of you guys either through construction systems or through research methods. My name is Ash Ragab. I'm a licensed architect, not in here, but an architectural engineer as well, licensed architectural engineer. I got my Bachelor of Architecture from Cairo, and my Master and PhD from University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, and I'm living there since then. I'm privileged to teach the lab this semester, which is simply, as Mark said, we just want to make sure that your design scheme works. So you design something that works. If we teach ID1, ID2, or even ID3, ID4, we kind of sacrifice some technicalities for the sake of, you know, creativity, some sexy schemes and all of this kind of stuff. But when you reach to a capstone, the complexity of the design problem is, you know, kind of high. This is why Mark went for mixed use. We will have like an underground parking garage that has to align with the structural system that you're going to pick. You have to make sure that you satisfy the codes, energy codes and building codes, egresses, especially for multi-use. You have to have shaft design or egress design to discharge people just in case, God forbid, anything bad happens on the upper floors. We have also a sustainability portion. We have to look forward, reducing the environmental impacts of our designs, of our materials that we are using, making sure that we design a tighter envelope. And last but not least, again, the structural system, it has to, you know, it has to work. We do have rigorous curriculum here in terms of technicalities at Lawrence Tech. So companies love our graduates. Just got some praises from some consultants with the people working with the IPAL. Russia was one of them, I think, this year. Brittany Murray, well, somebody else, I don't remember. But we are proud of you guys, and we are proud that we are part of this LTU community. People like Mark, we greatly appreciate his passion to teach and you know, educate our future architects. Yes, he does it for love. Okay, that's true, because nothing would compensate him for his experience. So this is just I would say you know, giving back to the community. Thank you so much, Mark. I'm gonna wait till he introduces the project and everything. And as I mentioned, the lab part has 4 main components just to ensure that your design schemes work. That's all. Very simple. Right, out of the bat. We just want to make sure that your design schemes work. Thank you, Mark, and I'm all listening.
Okay, good. That was excellent. Thank you, Ash. I appreciate that. I want to make sure that you all have a chance to, in effect, raise your hand and ask any questions of us and your role in the studio. There will be moments along the way this evening that you can ask that question later, but are there any initial questions that you're unclear about? And you can raise your hand or you can just blurt it out. I'll give you the floor. Not hearing any. So can I just get, like, I want to make sure you're all hearing me. Can I get a thumbs up from one of you at least? No thumbs up. Make sure I'm not seeing, can I get an audio then from everyone?
I can hear you.
Hi,
Okay,
I can hear you too.
Thank you.
Hi. I can hear you.
Okay,
Hello.
good. Cheers. So yes, this is online, and usually the school has given me 6, 7, 8 students to work with, and that experience is pretty nimble and seamless here in the online format. It's very quick and responsive. The fact that your class and your classmates are so many in number has, I think, slowed everything down and has kind of minimized all of you to a nifty sort of portrait of you, if you have one on Google. If you don't, it just has you as a like a target practice kind of person. So if you haven't created your Google profile, Joshua, Lynn, and Michael, please do that. And add your picture so it can come up as that for the default, just to make things more clear. Let's see. Let's talk a little bit more about seamlessness. Let's talk a little bit more about online. I'm an expert at teaching online. And through that experience and through that expertise, I've learned a lot of things, and I'm going to impart them with you now so that you fall in line with those sort of techniques. Things I'm going to be teaching you now aren't necessarily just to be an ideal online student or to be a better online student. These are things I hope that will bode well for you in practice. So I'm going to talk about excellence, professionalism, participation, communication, etiquette, and even grade sheets, right? So you're probably thinking, wait, I'm not done talking about, making sure that the buildings don't fall apart or making sure that, the moisture drive quotients aren't, out of whack. I thought, what do I possibly need to know at some 20-something years old about? I know that the salad fork is the one on the far left and that the meat fork is the one inside of that. I know that. I know that the bread is on the left and the drink is on the right. What more in the world of etiquette do I need to know? Well, here's what you need to know. You need to be here for our class. You need to be here for me, and you need to be here for one another. And since this is a tandem class insofar as you have 2 professors one studio, one lab that are going to keep this channel open for the duration of the evening that we have together. You need to be here for that. Does that mean you need to sit here for the whole time? Not necessarily. You will need to be with us for the first few weeks, because the way the class works is that we have to do research, parentheses, module 1, and then we work more independently on our proposal, on our design project. And it's when we get to that point that the schedule changes a little bit. I'll give you plenty of notice about when that happens, but you need to budget your evenings with us for the time slot. I think you can be here. Etiquette, well, if you can't be here because your leg got cut off by, a saw, or you caught typhoid, or something worse, you need to communicate that. You need to communicate that first and foremost with your 2 professors. And if you don't have their contact information, you can find that on the syllabus. So you need to text us immediately. If you're late, or if you're delayed, or if you're not going to be there, we need to know about it before the class starts. The second tier is that if you can't communicate that with us via text, you need to communicate it with that old-fashioned way, which is called email, right? The third tier is you need to tell a classmate, okay? And then that person needs to be advised to send it up the ladder, okay? Rule of etiquette. The second rule of etiquette is, are you ready for this? 2 hours. 2 hours. Do you know what that means? That means if you send me an email, Carmen, I will respond to you in 2 hours or less. Now, I go dark from 10 p.m. until 5 a.m. I do not answer emails during that time period, and I don't expect that you will. That doesn't mean that you cannot send me an email when I'm dark, but it just means that I won't wake up until 5 a.m. to read it. So if you need something from me during the darkness period, when we just came off the eclipse, I think you get a sense of what I'm talking about, you won't hear from me until I wake up. My schedule is like a clock. You heard the Beagles? They wake up at 5, I wake up at 5. So I am dark from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. I'm technologically unplugged between those hours, but any other time of the day, I pledge that I will reply to you and your email in 2 hours. Here's the gig. Here's the deal. You got to do the same. So if your classmates or your professors send you something, you have to reply within 2 hours. You getting that? This is a BFD. This is a big deal. It's the same deal that I have with my office, because my own clients, our own consultants, and our own internal communications at Hamilton Anderson rely on that etiquette. That I think that if you start to cultivate here, it will bode well for you then. Okay. And I want to make sure that you know that I will do everything in my power to answer that email. Even if I'm driving, I will pull over, or I will just say, gotcha, talk to you in 3 hours, and give you a sense of when I can give you the answer that's on your mind. Etiquette. Sometimes you do break your leg or get it cut off. Sometimes, you do catch typhoid, although we'll talk a little bit about health in a minute. So if you're not able to be at the class, there's 2 tiers of being there without, having to sit here on the evening of our class. One is that you should know that this conversation tonight and every conversation for the next 17 or 18 weeks is being recorded. It's live streamed on YouTube, and I will share with you the following day the YouTube site, the URL for tonight's lecture or for tonight's class. Well, so you're probably saying, well, why would, you know, if I sat for 4 hours or 3 hours in a studio, why would I ever need to go back and rewind that and replay that? Well, I don't expect that you will like replay every class, but there are some classes like pinup reviews, the final reviews, which are also recorded on YouTube, where you'll want to go back and listen to what was said to you. You'll want to go back and maybe listen to the points of a lecture that Dr. Ragheb or that I gave. You'll maybe want to replay it again so that you can take better notes or fill in the notes that you weren't able to take, you know, the first time. This is a very, and I think, compelling dimension of an online class. That's why this class is so much different than the maybe more traditional online class where you have a lecture recorded on YouTube and you download it on Saturday afternoon after you've just woken up from working all night in the studio, and you got bored after you've watched the lecture, and you continue to move your work in that class along. That's not what this class is. This is a studio. This is a studio that is intense, immersive, familial, interactive, live, and in real time. And it's modeled, no surprise, because I've been teaching for almost 35 years, on all of the bricks and mortar studio experiences that I've had in all those years. It relies on field trips. It relies on desk crits. It relies on lectures. Yes, I lecture. And none of them are recorded. None of them are, you know, something that I'm going to share a link with you and shit. No, I'm going to give the lecture right here, just like I'm talking to you right now. So in many ways, this will be a very new experience if you've never taken an online studio at Lawrence Tech. And in some ways, I hope you'll see the parallels, the similarities, the alignment to the studios that you've maybe had up to this point. Communication. And with that 2-hour window, you will find out that I will do my very best to communicate clearly, concisely, and fairly with all of you. You will find that I take great care to be responsive and accurate, and I also take great care in being transparent so that what I say to you is something that can be shared with many others and all others. So I hope that that becomes part of your own sort of pathos as you get into into the work environment. Participation. Y'all are pretty quiet right now. I can appreciate that. You're all probably crapping your pants going, what in the world is this project going to be about? How am I going to talk about you know, structural systems and energy calculations when I'm still learning the basics of being a capable and excellent designer? Well, like everything, you know, in architecture school, we work on these things in aggregative ways. We work on them incrementally. We eat the elephant one bite at a time. So I think you'll get into it very, very quickly, but you'll also learn that it relies not only on the things that Dr. Ragheb shares with you and that I share with you, but that it relies on the things that you share with one another. I think you will find that this class works on an expectation that you are teaching one another, as well as your professors teaching you. So your participation in any of the conversations is essential, and quite honestly, it's something that I think we take a notice of and look toward in a student that is really making a difference in their own work. Because I think participation, the questioning of issues, or the curiosity that you may have is not something that you just let reside within you, but that you convey it and share that to make your ideas more vulnerable, to make them more transparent, so that people know where you are and where you stand, and so that others can then align themselves with you, or maybe in a sort of position of some contrariness with you, ultimately creating for us an environment of professionalism that allows these various positions to be exercised and explained and maintained. Professionalism is the very most important sort of virtue that I think I can impart with you tonight and throughout all of the semester. So if you can maintain the decorum of etiquette, if you can be open and communicative, if you can be participatory, you will be move needle from flannel shirt wearing student to a professional in just no time. And then finally, there is a very high bar here. Dr. Ragheb talked about the compulsory sort of notions of structural systems, building enclosure, of sustainability, not to mention site, context, design, and on and on and on. Looking to see really design excellence in all of those things. When I say the word design, I mean that not as anything other than inclusive. I mean that to include structural framing and structural systems. I mean that to include building enclosure. I mean that to include sustainability. Design is all of those things. Design is not something that one does putting on a beret, smoking a hand-rolled cigarette, and drawing with a crayon shades of Pablo Picasso in his garret, painting in his blue period. That is not the only sort of dimension and aspect of design. Design is this integrative. It is a synthetic process. Is being able to demonstrate to all of us your expertise in all of those categories. So we are looking to see all of you sort of nail all of those categories in this semester's work, so that you learn that you learn important, and that you learn that here as an undergraduate or an emerging graduate student. I will say that I know that this can happen because I've taught this class before, and for about 10 years, as recently as maybe 7 years or 8 years ago, I actually graded the booklets that this class produced. I juried them. They were usually like blind juries where professors or architects from the community would come in and look at the booklets that students presented, that the students published, and we would review them over the weekend and grade them and have an exhaustive 3 or 4 hour conversation about each design from the perspective of meeting all of those compulsory sort of dimensions of the project. So I'm very familiar with where the level of excellence is relational to this class as pertinent to the Comp Design Studio. I've taught the studio before, and I've also been teaching, as you know, for several years in our graduate program in the Advanced Design Studio sequence. So I know what our students up to that point have experienced, because I know where their background is. I know what they're capable of. Okay, I'll pause and give you a chance to ask any questions about that. Like, do you really mean that you'll respond in 2 hours, or whatever other questions you might have? Work plan? Oh, did I not present that? Did I not print that? I might have to open it up here. Bear with me just a second. It might be back in the printer at my office. Here it is. Okay.
I did have a question before we
Go
keep
ahead.
going. Will we end up taking breaks at all during this, since it is a 5-hour long class?
Could you repeat the question, please?
Will we be taking breaks during these 5-hour classes?
Sure. I generally do myself, so we will probably need to do that as well. I can appreciate that question. It's not jail. I'll definitely give you some liberties in that regard. So if you open up the work plan for the studio work plan document that I sent out, I want to make sure you all got that. Can I have a thumbs up from you on that? That was on Blackboard.
Mark, is it the one that says course schedule and outline?
Let's see. Studio work plan is a 3-page document, and it's a week-by-week, day-by-day calendar. Have we found it? Or I put it up on the Blackboard. Great, thanks, Alex. I appreciate that. Okay, so let's go over that. Module 1. So if you go to the first page of the work plan, again, this is the 3-page document that, well, really 2 pages, that basically outlines the entire calendar for this academic semester. You know, it's like a wedding, right? You pick the wedding date and you work backwards from there. So the wedding date for you is either, this is the bottom, I don't know which date the university is going to make us present. It is either on Thursday or Friday of that week. That is benchmark 3/final review. Alex asked a great question the other day about that. Mark, I live in Florida and I work down here. Is it a requirement for me to be on campus for the review? I want to make it clear to all of you that live away, particularly like, you know, Alex, like Nancy, like Luis, that we actually run the online reviews online, right? So they're held and only required to be host those reviews on campus. We have a classroom that we set up, the cameras and the computers and the monitors. I don't know what day again that's going to be, but we host the reviews and broadcast or stream the reviews online from the LTU campus on either the 7th or the 8th of December. That's our wedding day, all right? That's also the day that we will have come in for this review. I don't know who they are yet. I probably won't know until November or December who the university is going to partner with us, but they generally come from a pool of architects and faculty members from the area, not just from Lawrence Tech, but from UDM and from Michigan. And they will come in and review your work with us. And honestly, they won't know anything about your work, which is also another level of sort of expectation that you need to take into account. Our very last class is actually on the 12th of December, which I appreciate is during finals week, but I like to have a final review conversation with each of you. It's a short conversation, and it is also kind of a closing remarks discussion. So I will visit with all 13 of you for just a few minutes individually, but before I do that, I will give you some closing remarks and some thoughts about architecture and your future in it on that last night of school. I wrote the words crunch week. I typically like to call it hell week, but you'll know what I mean when I say crunch week in writing or hell week here online. It's the week where we actually don't have the studio class, because I figure at that moment I'm the last person that you're going to want to see. But insofar as that is also when you're getting shoulder deep, if not eye deep, into the tectonics and the systems of the project, I imagine that Dr. Ragheb will be hosting conversations with each of you during that week. So as a project like this goes, his role and his consultation is characterized at the beginning and heavier at the end, and heavier at the beginning and lighter at the end. We're valuable at any point along the path, the journey of this seminar, of the studio, but I think our load in our backpack gets a little heavier at those times. Then we have Thanksgiving holiday, which means that we actually do not have class on that Thursday, which is a kind of a benefit because we actually missed the Labor Day. We have no class on Monday, which is the Labor Day holiday, but in any event, you don't get any sort of benefit from that. So the class is then taking all of that into account, taking the benchmark 3 into account, and taking the daily schedule into account. The first push, the first lift by you is the Module 1 research themes or research topics. The document for that went out earlier today. It's a very short duration. There are 2 dates for the pinup for that aspect. That is on Tuesday the 5th. That's the first day back from the break. And Thursday the 7th of September. At that point, we actually begin Module 2, which is the concept design for not only the site, that is the site strategy, the massing strategies, the approach to the site that you're going to take, but also the concept design for the site. So like everything in the studio, it's going to be very, very fast paced. In some ways, it's our effort to keep it fast paced so that you don't languish or linger on any one issue for too long a period, because the clock is just going so quickly that you won't have time to fetishize on something over or at the expense of something else. So we keep the pace very accelerated for that reason, but also, ladies and gentlemen, this is the way it is in our own office. We would never have this much time. We would never have this much time to do this project in my office. And if you have been working in offices up to now, you will know that you will never have this much luxury of time there to do a project like this in your own office. So in many ways, this mirrors, and this is sympathetic to the pace and the level of expectation, the level of completeness and thoroughness that Dr. Raghib talks about in his remarks for our studio. So I love that coincidence. Well, it's not a coincidence, it was all planned, but I love the parallel, right? We start really in earnest in that the second week of September, where we will talk about design. You will show me your work, where I say, like on September 12th, prepare and present concept designs. Those are the desk crit conversations. Those are the conversations that you'll schedule with me, and that I'll review your work individually during those nights. I'll talk a little bit more about how that plays out when we have 13 or 14 students. By the end of September, on to page 2 now, right? On page 2, you'll notice that we actually have the completion of Module 2 that manifests itself in Benchmark 1. I know that's confusing. I maybe should have revisited the sequencing of that. But the major pinup, a major grading and performance assessment happens at the end of September. By then, you will have been in school for a month. You will have had a package of research that we'll talk about in a few moments, and you will have some design concepts that you've modeled and that you can share with all of your mates and guest critics. We'll do that over 2 nights, Tuesday and Thursday, the 26th and the 28th. And on Tuesday, the 3rd of October, remember, this calendar is flying like the electric meter at my house in July. It's just spinning really, really fast. We will have another post-pinup conversation. This is a very important threshold in the class where I give you my honest opinion of where you are and where you need to be, and then I do that individually. But before I do that individually, I sit down and talk with all of you about your impressions of that experience of Benchmark 1. In Module 3, we begin the design development strategies, where we layer into the design that is, we hope, I don't want to use the word fixed because everything is negotiable and malleable and workable and to some extent evolving, but we're running with a horse at this point. By October 3rd, October 5th, we're going to ride that horse till the end of end of the semester, where we're going to start to layer in the structural systems. We're going to layer in building enclosure. We're going to layer in HVAC, life safety issues, accessibility. We'll have a talk about that. For me, in desk crit reviews, the evolution of these layers in your work relational to the design that you did for us in Module 2. Then we will have Benchmark 2 at the end of this module, which will be a pinup on the 24th and the 26th of October, literally 1 month from Benchmark 1. Right? Calendar's flying, ladies and gentlemen. We'll have a pinup review over 2 nights, and then I'll have a similar post-pinup conversation with each of you. Ultimately, we do this to give you the feedback and the critical assessment that you need to move your work forward, to advance it, to evolve it, and improve it. Then Module 4 begins. That's the final design proposal documentation. This is when you've synthesized all of the design effort relational to the research topics that were listed on page 1, relational to the research topics that were posted on Blackboard that I'll talk about in a moment. You layer in all those things and produce the documents that build the case for your design, right? That will take nearly a month. You're also going to be going into modeling and rendering and formatting your work into something that we expect to be ridiculously beautiful, right? State-of-the-art drawings, state-of-the-art modeling. Quite honestly, ladies and gentlemen, I expect that during this semester, you're going to be doing some of the most important work in your career as a student here at Lawrence Tech. So that leads us back to the Thanksgiving holiday where this whole conversation started. So 3 benchmarks, the final one in December, the second one in October, the first one in September, with a research package due in just a few weeks from tonight. That is the work study plan that we've created. Dr. Ragheb's plan has own lab with you. Will stitch together like a well-knit sweater with the dates and the issues that he's expecting you to carry forward in his lab with you, so that they link with the exercises that we're putting out for you in the studio itself. This is a 6-credit class that's broken into 4 credits for the studio and 2 credits for the lab. And that's why the expectation is so high. Are there any questions about that at this point?
I do have a question again. Why, I mean, we have the concept design in the first part of the class, and then we're layering all of the systems on afterwards. Why wouldn't we why wouldn't we be doing that from the beginning when it could change our concept after all? Yeah,
so I think that's a really good question. I typically will talk to you in terms like this. I never assume that, even in my own office, and I certainly don't assume here in this studio, that these exercises, these modules are autonomous and occur in a kind of a silo. I don't expect, for instance, that you'll do research and you'll drill and drill and drill and you'll get to China. You'll get to the core of the center of the earth and then back the drill bit out and then be able to say, I know everything I need to know about mixed-use buildings. And now I can be designing them. And then I'm going to come up with a strategy for the site and the form and back that drill bit out. And now I'm going to do the layering on of structure and enclosure and sustainability. I realize that the work plan is these as distinct and disparate exercises, but it's not humanly possible as would-be architects to think about a building form without thinking about, in a simultaneous fashion, structure, enclosure, site, and context. So I don't think that I'm asking you to think of these things in terms of silos or as things that are distinct. I do think that you will want to blend all of these considerations into your work. It's just that we're looking for certain levels of expertise from you at these moments along the work plan, along the calendar. I hope that answers your question. Who raised that question, by the way? It would help at least a couple of nights till I have memorized each of your voices.
That's Courtney.
Courtney.
Thanks, Courtney.
I have like another part of the answer for you, Courtney.
Thank you.
Because you talked about these things that blends into the studio. If you remember these 4 components, I would say that as Mark, please, Mark, call me Ash, okay?
Yes, sir.
As Mark said, you need to blend all of these together. We'll start the things that will affect your design, really, in the beginning is sustainability issue, climate. So that's part number 1. And part number 2 is energy / building codes and ADA accessibility. That's the part that you have to know in order to make a successful design. So these will blend well, these 2 points, sustainability codes, energy, ADA, okay? And then when you start developing the design at around module 2, module 3 and 4, then the structure and envelope will mature. Okay, so think of it this way, instead of like, you know, all over the place, things are scattered. So we'll try to make the research stage, which goes very quick, by the way. Thank you, Mark. People tend to, in this studio, I taught it twice. I taught the lab twice. Tend to keep designing, changing. And guess what? At the end, there is no structures or envelope. We will ask you, for example, to make us big wall section or a unique detail of your state-of-the-art cladding system that you're going to use in the project. Okay, so people are just, you know, they are very late. They don't stop modifying, and then they flush this out of the drain, and then get bad grades in lab. So I appreciate that Mark is going that fast. The research stage and the on ground, I'm not gonna say how much it takes. They're gonna make a right here against me and you, Mark. But Mark is an expert in this and has been teaching this for a long time. So I will learn this experience with you guys as we go by through this quick schedule. We took a decision, me and Dan, for example, that by certain day, like halfway to the semester or so, or a week after or so, we'll just stop all the designing modifications and to start doing the technical stuff, structures and HVAC, cladding, envelope development. So I think we'll see good projects following up with these schedules. So thank you.
Good. Excellent. Thank you. That's a good question. Ash, I do appreciate the comments that you made. I think they enhanced the sort of remarks that I was making. But I think Courtney, good one, because I actually do believe, Courtney and everyone, that you're, you know, like when you're making something in the kitchen, right? When you're making a stew or a soup, you're adding salt to the water early, and then you start sizzling the, you know, you start grilling the meat over here, and then you, in another pan, you're cooking the vegetables, right? You're working all of these things together that are somehow, and then you're going to add more salt later, you know, like all these things. Like, think of salt as structure. Think of the pepper as the structure, as the building envelope. You're adding these things into this sort of this recipe simultaneously, but you need to have all of those things organized, and you have to have a roadmap, right, to a recipe that helps you pull all those things together so that it is a coherent, complete thing semester. That's the easiest analogy. I don't know that it's a very lucid one, but it's one that I think makes sense because we've all eaten food before. Maybe some of you guys made something before, and other than like popcorn at the microwave. But even that, you had to have a microwave, you had to have the popcorn, you had to have the salt. You knew that you had to do those things, and that's sort of this process. So I do think that you're thinking of things in a simultaneous way, but in terms of what we need to see from you in terms of outcomes, in terms of deliverables, in terms of manifesting your knowledge of these things, we need to see it in this sort of more linear fashion. And I think this is the way that we believe that you can get to it. So we're working from the more general to the particular, and those things are thoughtfully considered and beautifully developed by the end of the semester. But that's a good question. What other questions are there?
Are we because we're gonna have desk crits? So are all our desk crits online, or will we ever have in-person desk crits?
Okay, so who was asking that question?
Rasha. Can you hear me? It's Rasha.
Hi, Rasha. So the desk crits will really start in September after the research is done in terms of your design, right? But in terms of, so let's talk a little bit about that. There are 13 students. Let's just say, because I can divide easily with 14, let's say there are 14 students. In order for you all to have a really intimate conversation with me that has some heft to it and quality to it, we will partner you with another classmate for your individual desk crit. So, and like 35 minutes with each of you, I can't physically do that in the course of 2 evenings without, and still fit it within the confines of our class session. But I can do it if I pair you with someone else. So I will have desk crits with you in pairs, and we will have those in a scheduled format. When we do have desk crits, Rasha, I will send out a Google Documents sheet on Sunday morning at 8:00 a.m. Eastern time, and it will be a matrix, right, of time slots on Monday and time slots, a matrix of time slots on Tuesday and a matrix of time slots on Thursday. And you will fill your name in on the slot that's available to you that also aligns with your own schedule. All right? Mm-hmm. And then you report, remember the conversation about etiquette and communication. Not that I would expect that you'd ever have that problem, Rasha, because I know you, Rasha, but you would report to that crit, and so would your partner. So maybe your partner is Joshua, for instance, or Paige, and you together with Paige would then and then you'd be able to peel off and go about your work. Or you can work and keep the volume on low and audit the other desk crits that are happening on Monday night and Thursday night. I've been teaching on Monday and Wednesday for so long that I've obviously grooved it, and I don't mean to say it that way tonight, but I apologize that I am. So from basically September forward, the schedule changes a little bit. It's more user-friendly for you, Rasha, and your classmates, and more of a burden for me because I sit through all of those conversations for the evening. We will probably have some individual conversations during the research phase as well. As I'm looking at that work plan, I know that will happen as well, because we will have individual desk crits for each of the research topics. And some of those topics will be managed by one person or two people. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. I also have one other question too about the final.
Yes, ma'am.
Because we're having
Yes.
it online, but it's gonna be it'll be hosted on campus. For those of us that
Yes.
would like to be on campus and present in person, could we do that?
Oh, yes, of course, yes. Okay, so yes. I forgot to tell you this. Excited about these numbers. Since 2010, Rasha, I've had 179 online students, studios and practice portfolio studios and independent study studios. And they've come from places like Hong Kong, Mexico, Texas, Louisiana, Portland, Los Angeles, Shreveport, blah, 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 blah. I've met all but 12. I've physically met, hugged, shook hands with, played with the babies of all but 12 of my online students. I'm really excited about that. That's pretty cool when you think about it. That's really like bloody awesome that in this online world where we're all too busy to even go to school in Southfield, that you can have a personal interaction with your professor via the online portal. So I know that doesn't mean anything to you, for me, Rasha, because you and I have already met, right? But like for the people in Texas, the people in Mexico, the people in Florida, folks, I'm gunning for you. I'm going to meet you. I pledge that. I'm going to meet you at graduation, or I'm going to meet you at a field trip, or I'm going to meet you at an AIA conference, or I'm going to meet you. I'm going to meet you, right? And every year I still meet another person that comprises that list. And by the end of, I think that number will be down to 11. I'm going to just keep chipping away at it. But I think that's really kind of interesting. But the way that that happens is actually by encouraging all of you, and I'll say this a number of times, to be on campus for the final review. So if you live in Flint, or if you live in Grand Rapids, or if you live in Traverse City, or if you live in Dayton, or Chicago, or Lapeer, you kind of, in my mind, have no excuse to be on campus for the final review. I know I'm asking a lot, but I'm not requiring it, because e-learning services and the College of Architecture and Design mandate that I cannot require. But it will hurt my feelings if you live in Lapeer and you can't come down for a review, or if you live in Toledo and you can't drive up for a review, because I would do that for you. And I'm dead serious about that. So the reviews are conducted online, but your review experience, thanks, Alex, I will meet you when you come back. And we'll get together with Hannah and Nicole and many others when that happens. I know that, and Sarah, of course, I know that the communication will be better, the clarity of your presentation will be stronger, so that if you can budget that, you already know when it's going to be, it's either Thursday or Friday, kind of like block that out on your calendar, ask for that PTO time now if you're working in an office, so that you can be here. And honestly, it's a great experience to have all of you into that classroom at Lawrence Tech when we have the final review, because the jurors in most cases are on campus with you, and so that conversation is more immediate and more intimate that way. But not all of the jurors will be on campus. Some of them may be online as well. because I take advantage of all these years of teaching by bringing in critics from out of town, by doing it the way we're doing it right now. But it's a good question. You're not required to be on campus, but I'll really like beg you, nag you throughout the semester to be here for that final review. But that's pretty cool, right? 12? I mean, my goodness, one of them is the dude from Hong Kong. 3 of them, holy crap, 3 of them are in Lansing. If I would just go to like a football game over there, I could probably like draw lines through 3 of them just doing that. There's actually 4 in Lansing. And then the others are just kind of all over the place. One little anecdote about this online experience, and I just got an email from him today. He actually called me today. He was an online student of mine from Cleveland, and he and his wife left their baby with his mom so that they drove from Cleveland to attend my Distinguished Architectural Alumni Award lecture on Thursday night last September, and then they drove home that night. So I was like, dude, are you serious? You drove all the way to be here? He's like, of course. Dude, of course I'm going to be there for that. So I was really touched about that. And I just goes to show you that the studio is an opportunity for that kind of camaraderie and support. And I hope that you find that. What other questions do you all have? Okay, do you want to take a break? I'll be back in 5 minutes. We'll come back at 7 o'clock Eastern time, and we'll go into the research topics, and I will keep this channel open, and I'll see you in 5. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's get back together. If we're all here, I can give you one more opportunity to ask questions about the work plan and about the online sort of format as it relates to etiquette, communication, participation, professionalism, excellence. I can answer any other questions about the schedule. Just shout them out. And again, let me know who's asking the question.
Hey, Mark, it's Alex. I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I was just wondering what your level of expectation from the classwork that we'll be giving to you from Tuesday to Thursday, given like the one day in between them, or
so if you
just like your thoughts on progress we should be making between those 2 days.
So, well, I won't. So let me explain things a little bit more clearly. Insofar as, like, let's say it's September and it's a Tuesday night and I give a lecture from 5:30 to 6:30, let's say, right? From 6:30 to like 9:30, we'll be conducting desk crits for half of the studio, right? On Thursday, I conduct desk crits for the other half of the studio. So let's say, Alex, that you're there on Tuesday night for the lecture and you're the 8:30 p.m. You have the 8:30 p.m. time slot with Luis, right? You'll talk to me then, and then you won't see me until the following Tuesday.
Gotcha. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. You can come back on Thursday and you can audit the desk crits that are being conducted on Thursday. And I certainly encourage y'all to do that, but I don't require it.
Hi, Mark. It's
But
Lynn.
for the initial weeks of this studio, the sessions are going to be more synchronous and interlaced with group conversations, rather like the one we're having tonight. Okay? I interrupted somebody. Who else had a question?
Oh, sorry, Mark. That was myself, Lynn.
Hi,
I
Lynn.
just wanted to circle back to your proposals and I guess expectations regarding communication and etiquette and the 2-hour reply window that you had mentioned for emails.
Okay. Raise the question.
For those of us who are engaged in professional practice with an office to a certain degree, like yourself, I guess during that window, I guess when I sort of imagine myself at my desk and engaged in the work that I'm doing there, I I guess trying to figure out how to balance and maintain that 2-hour window, I guess with the professional responsibilities and how you see it, or a dark period during that time, or how we address that facet of it.
What I'm saying to you all is that if you have a question for me, I will respond within 2 hours. And if I can't give you the answer you need because I'm like in a meeting like you are, I will let you know that that's the circumstance, and I will reply by this time. You know, I actually think I did that for you or with you, Lynn, when I was on vacation last week. So it's really my pledge to you. I with the sort of exemption of the dark period when even this little cowboy has to sleep at some point. So I do go dark, and you know, you won't expect to get any responses from me. I don't expect that with the community of young people, I resisted using the word millennials, with the community of young people that you all define and come from, that you will adapt or adopt this 2-hour window. I mean, I think it'll be difficult for you to do that, but I think it's worth trying. I think it's worth trying, not necessarily in our studio, but trying at work, trying to become disciplined to respond within 2 hours to a consultant who sends you an email, or to a colleague. Respond honestly and accurately within that 2-hour window, even if you can't give them every answer that you're being asked of. I think it'll be good discipline for you, and I think it will help you cultivate a better rhythm and a better efficiency in your own workplace. I will not send you emails, ladies and gentlemen, during the day and expect you to respond to me in 2 hours. I definitely understand that your attention is focused on work, as it should be, and I would be bummed if, like some of my team members, were being pestered by their professors with this ridiculous 2-hour window decorum and bugging them during the time I was paying them to work. So to be available within that window. And if through that example, you can cultivate your own self-discipline, that'll be lovely. Does that answer your question, Lynn?
It does, thank you.
Of course. Anyone else? Okay. So we have a couple more documents to go over. I thought I'd talk about the research topics first, but now I've changed my mind. I think I'm going to talk about the site and the building program because I'm really excited about this. And I think it's actually better to keep the things in the context of general and working towards the specific. So let's open up the site and building program document, which I know is also found on, it was also emailed to all of y'all. So, and get right into it. For those of you that maybe come from different parts of the world and different states and have never been to beautiful and dysfunctional Detroit, you're in for a treat. because Detroit is undergoing a renaissance, the likes of which it has never seen before. A million times. No, ladies and gentlemen, I'm 60 years old. I was 10 years old during the 1967 revolt, the uprising. I saw it in the newspapers. I saw it when my family drove downtown. I'm old enough to remember it, and I'm old enough never to forget it. I've never seen anything so bright as Detroit is right now. Even when I was in architecture school in the 1970s at Lawrence Tech, I did several of my projects in Detroit. One of my most exciting classes was an urban design studio around the time that you're taking this studio now. I took a spring semester urban design studio with Professor Catherine Beebe, who brought in Edmund Bacon, the late Edmund Bacon, one of the country's most preeminent urban planners, who was the planner. Oh, this is cool. Two cool things. Three cool things maybe about that. He was not only the planner of Philadelphia and the author of the important, usually found in your required textbooks for an urban design class, the author of Design of Cities, which he signed my copy of, but he was also the planner of the city of Flint in the 1950s. So I think it's pretty cool that one of my professors was the planner of both Flint and Philadelphia. But he's also the dad of Kevin Bacon, which is pretty interesting. The actor Kevin Bacon from Hollywood and TV and the like. So my favorite studio was Catherine's studio with Edmund Bacon, because it was a class that really allowed us to jump into Detroit. But even when we went downtown and looked at Detroit and looked at the site circumstances there, it was kind of a wasteland. It was desolate. It was barren. It was not active. It was not activated. It was still suffering from the loss of population and the loss of hope. In fact, the condition of hopelessness, quite honestly, pervaded the city from 1967 all the way till, gosh, 2012, 2010. And it was places like Dr. Kim's studio, and before him, Dr. Tom Barry's studio, called the Detroit Studio, that really began to look at Detroit as a place for design opportunity. It was really in places like University of Michigan and the University of Detroit Mercy, where many, many professors were looking at sites in Detroit as places to unpack new and innovative design ideas and urban innovative ideas in the city. And that momentum started to change. There became a tipping point in Detroit where even institutions like Penske and Gilbert and Ilitch began to look at Detroit as a parchment on which to write the legacy of where Detroit will go if they have anything to do with it. And so the project is exciting to me because it is in a long line of experiences that I've had with Detroit, not the least of which is the experiences that our firm and me personally have had working with Dan Gilbert's team at Bedrock, working on City Modern Detroit. And so for those of you who are learning about Detroit for the first time, or think you know about Detroit and its history, you'll be excited to know that our project will take place in historic Brush Park, which is, as the City Modern Detroit site says, is long considered one of Detroit's most iconic neighborhoods. But I think that you need to learn more about Brush Park. Quite honestly, I think you need to learn a lot about Detroit by reading David Moranis's exceptional book, Once in a Great City, A Detroit Story, which you can get online in a used copy, and the library has actually, our bookstore has actually ordered copies for you. David Maraniss is a meticulous researcher, an exquisite writer, was raised in Detroit, and tells an amazing story about our city, linking 12 different threads together to stitch a picture of Detroit's zenith, which occurs between 1962 and 1964. I could not put this book down, and I encourage you over the next few days to read it, and hopefully you'll have a much clearer picture of the city, and certainly of Brush Park having done so. So Bedrock in 2014 went after 9 acres of land to purchase from the city of Detroit, called lots A and B. You all realize that, of course, the city of Detroit as an entity owns over 80% of the properties and buildings in the city. And when you think about that impressive number, you're probably thinking, well wait a minute, how is the city making any revenue in terms of taxes off of property that they own? And that's the rub, ladies and gentlemen. So what the city has been doing, what the planning department has been preparing, are requests for proposals, RFPs, to release land for the sale in strategic and careful ways. And so in 2014, the city released for a proposal lots A and B, 9 acres, called City Modern Detroit. The long story made short is that Bedrock, hiring Hamilton Anderson to design the master plan, the landscape architecture, and to create the 5 different housing types that comprise the vision that is being built today, was awarded that RFP in May of 2015, some 5, 6, 7 months later. Fast forward even further, the 2 largest buildings designed by our office are under construction today. So if you go to the City Modern Detroit website, which is actually a hot link in the site and building program document, you can look at our renderings and you'll notice the aerial perspective. And it's in that aerial perspective that you get a vision, right, of the density, the compaction, the variety, and the strategy for infilling within all of that vacant land, save for the 4 existing historic properties, what City Modern Detroit is proposing. What we're doing, what you're doing this semester, is looking at the southwest corner of John R. Street and Alfred Street, located in Detroit, on a parcel that is about 151 feet by 167 feet, which is essentially 4 different pieces of land, which you can learn more about on loveland.org. On the Loveland site, which is also a hot link. We're saying right now, we're assuming that Hamilton Anderson was not asked to design the building that is currently being built on the site called 124 Alfred. We're assuming that the building that we did not happen. We're assuming that Bedrock, in their infinite wisdom, hired you, hired each of you to come up with a proposal for that site, and that's what you're executing this semester, okay? And the site plans for that parcel are all found in the rear of this attachment. The building envelope index, the site that we're talking about in that colored site plan is A3, and then the issues that have to deal with the apartment buildings is described in the next plates, and then the final plate, A3 building envelope, that sheet is the site plan that you work from, okay? So Why this site? Well, because I know it. Why this program? We'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. But Brush Park is not only exciting growth and the most development of the so-called Midtown / Cass Corridor neighborhood, which is well established in terms of contributing to the renaissance of the city of Detroit. It's exciting because it's historic. It's exciting because there's only about 12 historic old mansions remaining. Many of them are not even safe to walk in. 3 of the 4 in the Bedrock parcel are not safe to walk in. Right now, you can't even get into them. One of them actually was renovated. That's the so-called Ransom Gillis mansion, which is actually kitty corner, north and east of your site. So that's one of your neighbors. It's exciting because it's basically in that gap between Midtown, Cass Corridor, and downtown. So it links those 2 communities, which are thriving and crazy busy. It is adjacent by literally 1 block to Woodward Avenue, which is the M1, which, if you know anything about Detroit, is now the location of the active and running Q line, which is our streetcar that runs from Bethune and Woodward all the way down to Hart Plaza and back again. The Q line is our streetcar that connects those communities, and that means that your development is a transit-oriented development. To the east of the site is historic Eastern Market. It's a walkable distance, although if I have 4 bags of groceries and vegetables and flowers that I had to carry, that would probably be an arduous walk in February in the rain or in the snow. So it's more of a bike distance away, but it is walkable. And on a day like today, I can't think of anything grander than walking to Eastern Market from one of your apartment designs in Brush Park. And on September 12th, it's actually finishing up on the 1st, and our office is one of the 2 architecture team members responsible for not only the arena, but for the perimeter buildings that are holding the street wall along Woodward, Henry, Sproat, and Clifford. So for our office to be involved in both of these developments is pretty darn exciting. And the site that we're looking at is actually just above I-75, which at this moment runs when one crosses I-75 to move south into downtown. You're shaking hands with the Fox Theater, with East Field, and with downtown itself. It's about a mile from our site in Brush Park to the Noguchi design of Hart Plaza, but it's walkable. And as someone who walked 8 miles in New York City the other day, it's not the distance, it's the experience. And I think that experience of that walk will be very exciting in about 5 years when one of your buildings is being realized there. But it gets richer and it gets a little bit more interesting as you read the program statement. And here's why. The City Modern Detroit site is an exciting example of 5 architecture firms working collaboratively over the 2015 and 16 year to create a contemporary neighborhood of modern buildings in this historic district of Brush Park. So we actually, our firm worked with 4 other firms. We did not design every building. We designed the typologies for the RFP. Then Bedrock hired 4 other firms to design townhomes, apartment buildings, carriage houses, and to renovate the 4 historic buildings. And we all worked in a charrette fashion, meeting collaboratively with the firms LOHA, L-O-H-A, Merge Architects, L-O-H-A is out of Los Angeles, That's Lorcan O'Herlihy, one of the most exciting young architects in the country. We're working with Merge Architects out of Cambridge. Beth Whitaker spoke at Lawrence Tech last spring, and if you caught her talk, it was riveting. She also spoke at UDM the day before. I helped organize Beth to come to Lawrence Tech, so I'm excited that we were able to bring her in. We are also working with Studio Dwell out of Chicago, and then Christian Hertini out of Detroit. Brian Hertini is an alum of Hamilton Anderson, and he's an alum of Lawrence Tech, and he's an old classmate of mine, like Victor Soroki was. So our firm worked with those 4 other firms, and so think about it, a blank slate, save for the 4 existing homes in that 9 acres. So Lorcan would come to the table with his buildings, Beth would come to the table with hers, we would come to the tables with ours, Studio Dwell would come to the tables with theirs, and we talk about our ideas, our materials, our massing, and we refine our designs over the course of time to become the sort of vision that's being executed now. So that was a very interesting scenario that is playing out. In fact, those buildings are under construction right now. City Modern Detroit is something that you can see architecture activity, construction activity occurring in right now. The ambition for City Modern Detroit was also to offer places for residents to own or rent, and they set aside 20% of the rental properties for low-income or affordable dwellers. Ultimately, to create a place that is authentic, where dining, shopping, and living can occur in the same venue. So again, the premise of our studio, ladies and gentlemen, is to assume that for the building located at 124 Alfred Street, which is what City Modern Detroit calls it, which is currently under construction, is being designed now by you. We're throwing out the Hamilton Anderson design, and we're supplanting it with your design. So your building will not only need to be contextual with the existing multi-story apartment building west of us, and the residents, the historic residents adjacent to us, the Ransom Gillis house kitty corner from us, but also with Lorcan's work, with Beth's work, with Loha's work, with Studio Dwell's work, with Merge Architects' work. You're in sort of aesthetic conversation with them as well, just like we were. Let's see. And then finally, the proposal, like it was for us, as it will be for you, is for an age-restricted building. That is for old farts, right? People that are 55 years and older will only live there. You will provide housing opportunities for people that are moving into their senior years, 55 years and older, in a multi-story. It also features adequate parking, and also has the sort of program spaces that will be outlined in the next paragraph. Again, 20% will be set aside for affordable. So you're to design 50 residential apartment units, and you're also to design 50 parking spaces, including the requisite number of ADA or Americans with Disabilities parking spaces. You'll have to provide 5,000 square feet of retail space on the ground floor, and that can be broken into 2 separate spaces. You need a residential lobby that needs to be accessed from A Street, but it also needs to service or be connected to the parking area. It needs to have a vestibule that has an airlock. That would be for both ends, right? For the street and for the parking area. It has to have a mail room that also has room to receive Amazon deliveries, because old people don't, walk to the drugstore to get razor blades every time they run out of razor blades. We order them online, and Amazon delivers them to us the next day. So the way that commerce is happening actually, and the way that it impacts the retail community is actually impacting architectural design, and your building will respond to that. It needs to have a sitting area for till you come down, till I come down to pick up my Happy's Pizza. So that guy needs to have a place to sit, and there also has to be a desk for an attendant or a concierge. Has to have a meter room, which will probably end up being located either on the ground floor or in the basement. And the meter room will contain spaces for, you know, gas meters, water meter, and fire suppression, standpipes, and the apparatus that are associated with that. We'll have an electrical room. It'll have a gas-fired generator, which has requirements for ventilation that needs fresh air. Those are usually located either on the roof, but that impacts vibration, or in the basement, that impacts access to fresh air. It can be located on the ground floor, and that takes up space from what's left. It has to have a trash room, which has to be located on the interior of the building. So you're not doing a trash dumpster. You'll do a trash room where a building a facilities individual will take trash that has been filled up from the trash chute above, which connects to all of the residential units, and organizes that for trash day, which is probably 2 or 3 days per week, as I have found in residential buildings like this. You'll have a 400 square foot laundry room, which will also have a lounge area, because when I'm doing laundry, I like to do other things. Plus I need to relieve myself, so I need an ADA toilet there. I'll also have a 350 square foot exercise room with a toilet room, because you don't have a body like this. I have 3 beagles, as maybe you've heard. They need to be laundered and washed, so I need a dog wash room at about 50 square feet. You need to have lockers for each homeowner or dweller. We need a community space, and I suggest that you put that on the terrace or on the roof, and it has to have a 600-foot outdoor terrace area. And you'll understand why that dimension or size is the way it is. And the community space has to have its own ADA toilet. 2 elevators. I recommend gearless traction elevators. One of those elevators should have a hi-hat in it so that you can move furniture in and out on move-in days and move-out days. Again, these are apartments, so every end of the month you might see activity, either by attrition. So-and-so died last week, so they're moving out. I see an opening, or I move into a condo, for instance, or into an assisted living, for instance. You also need 2 exit stairs, and they need to discharge to the public way. And I suggest that you need balconies, and I'm encouraging you to limit the configuration of balconies to occur only on the street facades, because those street facades generally don't get direct sunlight, the north and the east facades. The residential units should be, those 50 units should be blended as 7 with 2 bedrooms and 43 with 1 bedrooms. Okay, that's your building program. It's concise, but there's a lot here that ain't written down, and we'll go over that. And there are 2 things that we talk about from the very beginning until the mint goes on the pillow when we deliver our mixed-use buildings. You'll have no idea what they are, but I'll tell you. It's the trash room and it's the dryer vents. I'm here to tell you that those are the bane of every architect's existence as you design these buildings. And so, like Courtney was talking about, you'll be thinking about those things when you're thinking about window sizes, when you're thinking about solar heat gain, when you're talking about structural decks, and when you're talking about materiality, you'll be thinking about dryer vents, and you'll be thinking about the trash sequence. That's one of the things I love about this project, because this is a project that 3 interns with just a few more years experience than you designed for this site from our office. This is what I give our team members. And so for me to have this opportunity to give you the chance to design something is really so sympathetic to what we do in my office, and so sympathetic to the horsepower that our team members have, to your own horsepower, that I can't think of a better project that deals with the complexity of urban form, of mixed uses, of aging in place, of blah, 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 blah. All the things that we're asking you to fire on all cylinders for is going to happen in this project. So I'm excited about the opportunity to see you juggle all these chainsaws in the air. Are there any questions about what I've just said, or what I wrote, what I shared with you about the program? I'll open the floor to you.
Hi, Mark. It's Lynn.
Hi, Lynn.
Will there be budget considerations at all, or are we kind of allowed to run?
No.
Okay.
I will talk about that right now, but I'll share two things with you. Because budget is always based on a reality of the cash flow of a developer and the revenue stream that can be predicted in a pro forma that a developer and a contractor will prepare for any project. And I just had an independent study that took my advanced design studio from last semester, and he did that. He prepared the pro forma and learned about the viability of his designs as he worked throughout the semester, and that was a very interesting thing. So here's a couple of things that I would tell you, that I would tell people. You know, Detroit's the gold rush right now, the California gold rush, meaning that everybody in the world's moving to Detroit or coming to Detroit to buy property. Everybody is, and we're getting phone calls all the time, thanks to many people that are recommending our firm to help them do projects here. And they're all saying this: how much would a mixed-use building cost to do in Detroit? And I usually say more than you think. We're still a union town, and these are complex buildings. And the planner, Maurice Cox, and his excellent team have set the bar very high for quality in the city. So all new buildings have to be of the highest caliber of architectural design, which means that that has a budget implication. So I tell our clients that they should expect a blended cost, all inclusive, of anywhere between $175 per square foot and $195 per square foot. That again is $175 per square foot and $195 per square foot. That does not include soft costs, like acquisition, entitlement processes, lawyers' fees, and on and on and on and on. Permitting doesn't include any of the soft costs that are involved in development. That's just like bricks and mortar. That's the architecture, and that's the number. And the number is closer to 195, Lynn, when you do parking like we're doing in your building. That's the first story. The second story is, on Tuesday, Tracy and I, she had never been on the High Line, so we walked the High Line. And we're walking near the new Zaha Hadid building. Have you heard of her?
Yes, I have.
So she has a brand new mixed-use residential building in Manhattan. The photographs of that are on my Instagram page. You can go to the Zaha Hadid New York City building website. I don't know what it's called. You kind of type all those things together and it'll fire it up. And my jaw dropped. I could not believe the curtain wall. I could not believe the handcrafted metal skin that creates the spandrel, the topographic spandrel between the floors, between the windows and the floors. I was literally blown out of the water. And I've been following Miss Hadid's work since 1984, when I bought her monograph called Planetary Visions, when she was a young upstart that had just left the Office of Metropolitan Architecture. That's Rem Koolhaas's firm. So I've been looking at her work for a very long time. And I've seen her work in Cincinnati, and I've seen her work in other places. And this was kind of mind-numbing. Lynn, I cannot even imagine what this building is costing in New York City, but it ain't costing $195 a square foot, I assure you. It is way north of that, way north of that. But that could not be a sustainable exercise if it had been deposited on your site in Detroit, because our community may not absorb that kind of product, but maybe there will be a time when that does happen. So the short answer is nope. We're not necessarily concerned with budget because that's just too complicated a layer to add to it. Suffice to say that we have so many other things that we need you to be accountable to that the one thing I probably have relaxed, that we have relaxed in this studio, is the budget.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that's a good question. Who else has questions?
I do. It's Paige. With like 2-bedroom and or 1-bedroom apartments, is there any limit on the square footage for those?
Great question. Have you ever ordered a pizza at a restaurant and you've gone with like your baseball team, or maybe you belong to a wine club or a book club, rather? I meant to say book club, as I know the president doesn't like us to have alcohol on campus, so I'll call it a book club. Or maybe you've made brownies for, you know, your friends, and, you know, you can order a large pizza for your book club of 13, and you can cut it into 13 pieces or into 26 pieces or, you know, into 39 pieces, right? You understand what I'm saying? It's going to depend on the site. It's going to depend on the footprint of the building. It's going to depend on a number of sort of variables that, through the process of drawing and thinking about a lot of things, and Ash touched on this a moment ago when he said something really startling and brilliant, and it is the essence of mixed-use buildings. When he said that parking drives structure, which defines the overall building. You're going to laugh at this, but drives the structural bay, and it drives the it drives everything below and on the first floor. So in a way, a lot of things are going to have to come together very quickly. We'll work very closely, Paige, as we go through this process, but because I'll teach you how to do this. But parking is kind of like the first thing you got to lay out, and that's why I've made you accountable to parking. But you're kind of thinking, well, what the what? He's not answering my darn question. Oh, by the way, I swear like a longshoreman. So you're going to hear me drop the F-bomb, the S word. I'm sorry. I'm apologizing right now. I've been doing it for a long time. This you know, leopard is not changing its spots. I know it's not the right thing to do, but I just do it because I get so excited about things. But you're probably going to say, what the what? He's not telling me how big these damn apartments should be. See what I mean? I'll work with you on that. But you will find, in other words, that with the building footprint that you create, right? The pizza, the brownies, right? That you bake, you're going to have a square footage based on the shape and dimension of your floor plate. That floor plate will necessarily have elevators. It'll necessarily have egress stairs. have a corridor, right? So all of a sudden, like 15, 17, 20% of the floor plate is already eaten up by infrastructure, right? By common spaces, right? So what's left over, Paige, is going to be the residential units. And your goal is to hit 50. You're going to be saying, well, I can get, you know, 6 on one side of this corridor, 6 on another side of this corridor, assuming it's a double loaded corridor configuration. And this is the area of that piece. If I divide that area into 6 units, what's the chunk? That's developer talk. What's the chunk square footage? That's going to be probably around 800 square feet. So, you know, maybe 1 bedrooms are like, you know, 700 square feet. Maybe 2 bedrooms are like 900 square feet. Maybe they can be a little bit more. Maybe they're 2 bedrooms with a flex room. I'm not being that particular. So we'll work through that, but that's a really good question. And it is, it's a really important question because it goes back to Lynn's question about cost implication of the development. Because at some point, an apartment in Detroit, for example, not New York City, an apartment with 3 bedrooms or a 1-bedroom apartment that's 1,700 square feet just ain't gonna fly, right? So I'll help you calibrate the sizes of those units. I'll help you design them so that they work with your floor plate. All right, your site is a big site, 151 by 167, but ladies and gentlemen, it's not gonna be all architecture, right? It's gotta have drive aisles, it's gotta have parking spaces, and it's not gonna hold all 50 cars on the ground floor. So you gotta have underground parking in order to satisfy the parking requirement. Well, how do I get underground? Well, I have to have a jump ramp, right? I have to have a ramp that goes from the grade to the lower level. So that eats up, you know, another bite of the brownie. That eats up another huge dimension of that first floor plate. So ultimately, Paige, the floor plate itself is probably going to be much smaller than you're imagining right now, much smaller than the physical dimensions of the site. And that's why you're going to need to privilege the ground floor for all of that parking and drive aisle and underground parking ramp infrastructure, along with the lobby and retail spaces. That means that the building will necessarily have to go vertical in order to hit the number of residential units that the developer is asking for, which is 50. So it's going to be, you know what it's like? It's like algebra, you know, 2x plus y equals 24. It's sort of like algebra, right? There's variables at all different components of the equation. And the minute you kind of say, I'm going to design 800 square foot units, and then you realize, well, but the footprint really requires them to be 600. So you go back and you change that variable and make it a fixed element, right? So it's kind of, oh, I love doing that stuff. I mean, and if you can learn to do that stuff here in this studio, whoa, I'm going to want to talk to you in March at the career fair. Next question. Yes, Ash.
Can I ask a question on their behalf?
Yes. Gosh, I hope I can answer it.
How about the construction system or the structure systems? Can they mix between, let's say, concrete and the first floor or so, where you have these common spaces and vestibules and entrances, exits, and, for example, wood on the upper floor The reason I'm
Yeah,
asking.
that's a great question, Ash. You just froze on me, so I think.
Okay, I can repeat it. Are you there? I'm just gonna wait a second.
There, can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you now. Why I'm asking this question is in 1 year we
Yes,
had.
so this is an excellent question. So one of the remarks in the discussion about research topics alludes to hybrid structures. And we'll talk a little bit about that there, and we'll talk a little bit about it certainly in the building code research.
Oh yeah, I can see here. Yep.
Right, where we talk about horizontal separation and vertical separation in mixed-use buildings. You know, one thing I would encourage you to do, you know, not necessarily tonight, but maybe tomorrow on your way to work, or sometime this weekend, is maybe in your memory try to recall a job site of like like a Hampton Inn or a Quality Inn or a Clarion Hotel that you might have seen going up nearby, or maybe you recall seeing one that's currently under construction right now, and kind of drive by it, and hopefully it's not far along, or it's only far along enough that you can actually see the skeleton, the structural approach to it. We'll talk a little bit about this, but one thing that's really fascinating about these mixed-use buildings is that, you know, you have to think of the buildings, you guys, as these combustible things, right? As a fuel source for a fire during a catastrophe. I know that's morbid, but our building code contemplates, it's written under the predicate of if-then. If there is a catastrophic event, then these assurances in the design of the building must be attended to. So for a building like this, for example, we are going to learn from our research and our discussions that the residential occupancies, which usually occur above the first floor, have to be separated not only from one another horizontally and vertically, right? But they have to be separated from a different occupancy or use group. I want to parse my words on this. So use group is also kind of equivalent to occupancy. So if I have residential over retail, that is those are two separate uses, and the building code, as our building code team will, there is an hourly separation of the deck in terms of fire resistivity that the architect needs to design for. That resistivity could be 2 or 3 hours, for example, which means that if there is a fire event, then the residents have the assurance that their component of the building won't begin to catch fire 3 hours, depending on that requirement, which gives them 2 or 3 hours to get the hell out of Dodge, right? To use the egress components to evacuate the building, which is why they discharge to the public way. So we'll talk a little bit about that, but Ash's question is a most compelling one, because you will see in those Hampton Inns, you will see in our building right now, which is under construction at the City Modern Detroit site, you will see a concrete basement for the parking deck, which has its own intrinsic fire sort of non-combustibility rating. And then you will see red iron, or which I call it, or structural steel, as you may call it. You will see a structural steel frame rising vertically and then running horizontally to become a composite deck, right? So a composite deck is a corrugated slab with an integral pour of 5 inches of concrete. And that composite deck provides the hourly separation of the residential units, which will go above the retail floor, which is comprised and housed within the red iron first floor frame. You will see this play out in those Hampton Inns. You will see this play out in any mixed use building. If you were at the Lawrence Tech DCDT campus at any point during its construction, the same thing played out there. And across the street at the Scott, designed by our friends over at Newman Smith, you saw the same structural strategy of a hybrid frame or a hybrid frame building play out there as well. Great question.
I was asked this question when we started this lab probably a couple years ago by one of the students. Sure. Are we allowed to have different construction methods or structures methods, i.e. concrete, of course, concrete in the first floor, or steel,
yep.
and wood, for example, for the residential units above. So that was
yep.
the question.
Yep.
Thanks.
And we will talk about that. It's an excellent question. There's no right answer to it. We find a lot of our developers fancy using wood studs for the 5th, 4th, 3rd, 2nd floors. But here's the deal, right? They also love to use brick, or maybe you want to use brick because you love brick and because this is an historic neighborhood and there's a lot of brick. So sort of think about that for a minute. You got 5 floors of a brick curtain wall that needs relieving angles at each floor to hold up the brick so that the brick isn't bearing down on itself. The loads to transfer to that first floor of steel. So suddenly that first floor of residential has a, pardon my French, a shitload of wood in it to hold up all that brick. And that impacts the fenestration strategy. You can't have big expanses of glass because you've got so much wood in the wall picking up the load of all of those relieving angles. So it's an equation, right? It's an algebra equation. We're going to talk about that. It's a great question. I love this class because I love doing these kinds of buildings because it's a school day every project, and yet you have to use common sense and you have to work with your clients. So it's definitely a fun gig. Great question though. Who else has questions? None. So you're all experts at mixed use buildings? You're all experts at apartment building design? Parking lot designs? Parking deck designs? Excellent. Like I said, you're going to be teaching each other through your conversations, and I look forward to learning from each of you.
I have a question.
Yes, who's this?
Courtney. How much of our parking needs to be on ground, and like the percentage of on ground level to underground level parking, I guess?
I don't know. Let's maybe think about the question a little bit differently. Who's the parking for?
Got it. Okay.
And here's another question. Here's another question. Let's say we used brownies a minute ago. Let's say Andrew is a world-renowned baker. Not only is he an awesome architect, but he's a world-renowned pastry chef, right? And he's taking one of those retail spaces, right? He's leasing 2,500 square feet or 2,000 square feet on the first floor, right? And he's going to open up his shop, and I'm going to go there to buy, you know, one of his confectionery delights. I'm probably not parking in the site. I'm probably not using the underground parking facility. I'm not even going to be bold enough to park on the surface, I'm probably going to find it just more convenient, Courtney, to park in front. Right? I'm going to like get that space right in front of Andrew's shop and park my Jeep there. So the parking is not for the residential, I'm sorry, the parking is not for the, it's not for retail customers, and it's not necessarily for the retail tenants.
Yeah.
Right? But here's the deal. People, in a perfect world, kind of sleep at night and park their vehicles, you know, in the deck at night and then leave during the day to go to work, and they vacate that parking space. So some of the spaces, maybe those ground floor, right, that at-grade parking asset that you create, maybe some of those spaces could be shared, right, for the retail tenants, for the people like Andrew that actually work there. Maybe Schneider, the building facilities guy. That was a subtle reference. None of you probably caught that, but Schneider was the building reference on a show called One Day at a Time, also from the 1980s. So whenever I mention Schneider, that's who I'm talking about. I'm talking about the guy that's dealing with the trash, that's dealing with the mail and the packages, that's dealing with your noisy thermostat or, you know, a broken seal in the window. He's there to take care of the building. So maybe he parks his car there. Maybe the concierge parks there during the day. Parking, Courtney, is gated. We can talk about that. So that you'd have a fob that activates a gate that draws open, and then Schneider or Andrew can park their vehicle at grade, and it drops behind them. Anybody else from parking there because it was available. And the same thing with the speed ramp. Maybe there's a gate at the entrance to the speed ramp that inhibits anybody from saying, oh, dude, I think I know some spaces in this building. We can park there and walk to Ford Field, right? Because that just won't work here, right? Does that help?
Yeah.
Good question.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else? All of these questions are going to start fermenting, and you're going to ask them, and you're going to pepper me, which is why I like it if you guys kind of audit each other's conversations, because when I say something here, I'm assuming that if I said it to Nancy or Luis or Lynn, that you all heard it, because you can be in all of the classes. You can be in all of the conversations. You can watch it online. So I will try to remember to repeat myself, but remember, I'm 60 years old and I forget a lot, which is part of the problem with being my age. I interrupted someone who was asking a question.
Me, Nancy. Are we going to be required like green areas or garden or something for the project?
You mean like garden areas or landscape areas?
Yes.
Good question. I think it is a question that has a similar answer to cost. You know, when you're designing something, you're trying to, you know, create a situation that certainly makes it buildable and makes it absorbable. That is to say that you want your building to be, you know, picked up by the marketplace. You want your building to sell or rent quickly, because then your owner's happy, and then she or he is going to call you for the next job, you know, for the next development, and they will come to you because you did such a great job on this one. So, like, thinking about the features like balconies and community spaces, thinking about open space, thinking about plantings, thinking about the landscape experience, thinking about the experience people have coming into and leaving the building, thinking about the experience they have coming into the parking facility, thinking about places where they can grow tomatoes or basil, and anything else that can make the quality of life so lovely that your development is the one that anybody who's anybody will want to live in, the sort of average developments. Where in Texas are you from?
Mission, Texas, like in the border.
What city? Like Houston?
It's Mission, McAllen. No, way south.
Okay, way south. So
we're next to McAllen. Yeah.
Are you near the Rio Grande?
Valley, yeah.
Okay. Have you been to Austin?
Yeah.
Do you know it very well? Do you know South Congress Street?
Not really.
There's a building by Michael Hsu, H-S-U, called the South Congress Hotel. And I think he does a lovely job there, blending architecture, open space, and landscape architecture into sort of one complete experience. And I think in Texas, right, that becomes an expectation because you have such lovely weather for so long, except for when you get a hurricane. And here in Michigan, we have a kind of a different climatic condition where we only have like 6 months or 7 months of growing season. So we have to think about plantscapes and plant selections in a more strategic way, things that look good even in the winter. That have a durability sort of factor, and that are kind of hardy. So for those of you who are from the border or south of the border, this may be kind of an adjustment for you, but I won't be crabby with you if you pick the wrong plant materials or if you do the wrong things in terms of landscaping, which is another reason why we're not sort of requiring it here. But I think contributing to the design with a sensible landscape strategy will make a better product for you. Certainly, that's a great question. Anyone else? Great. I think what I'll do is move right into the last document that we submitted today to you, research topics, and then I'll hand it over to Ash. You're completely exhausted listening to me talk. I believe that you all know a great deal right now. Your fourth year, your fifth year plus students, many of us have been practicing. In some cases, I've had fourth and fifth year, 6-year students who are 40 and 50 years of age, where they've decided to come back to school to get a Master of Architecture because life happened and it never, they just never finished their education. And in order to stay relevant to the profession, they jump back in at considerable sacrifice. And I've had a lot of students with that kind of maturity level. So I assume that you all know a great deal. Some of you may know more than others, and I think that's fine. But what I do believe, no matter how much you do know, I do believe, like Frank Gehry says, that you must challenge what you know. You must test what you already know. So in other words, you may be an expert at building codes or accessibility or aging in place because of unique experiences in your own world or in your own life or in your own family. But this class is going to ask you to dive deeper and look at it more objectively and more carefully, because what you know or what you're about to learn is something you have to teach 12 other people about. In other words, you're going to be researching one of these themes, maybe alone, maybe with a colleague, but you have to know it so well that you have to be able to teach a class at that pinup review at the end of this first module. I'm not teaching you anything about this research or any of these topics. I'll share what I do know with you, but I am not assuming that you have this head that sort of opens up, and I'm going to pour in, I'm going to make sure this is locked, I'm pouring in all of the content that I know you need to do this work. No, that's not the case. I don't assume that you are empty vessels waiting to be nourished and fed and quenched in a literal way. I assume that you have tools to go about researching these themes. You have the ability to look at the faculty that are on campus and engage them. You have our excellent library. You have other libraries through the library network. You have other classes that you've had. You have other students that have taken this class that you can look to and stand on the shoulders of them in order to learn more, to learn enough about what you are choosing as a topic so that ultimately you can share it with all of us in a few weeks. All right? So Module 1, the research themes, will require all of you to select, and some of you have already selected the research topic that you fancied, which is just fine. You select a research topic and take a very deep dive, right? And those topics are articulated in that numbering that starts at the bottom of page 1, the city of Detroit and the Brush Park neighborhood. That's talking about all those things, including the history and all of that soft and touchy, sensitive stuff that makes Detroit so special. I expect that one student will become an expert on that. The Detroit Future City Framework, and just 2 days ago, the Detroit Future City 139 square miles and the current City of Detroit zoning ordinance are also a research topic that one of you needs to own and become the do exhaustive research on and become the expert, so much so that you share what you've learned about those issues with our classmates. Two of you will own the research dedicated to mixed-use hybrid buildings. One of you, and that student's already been chosen, one of you will become the experts on my generation, the aging, dying, transitional baby boomer population. One of you will own the research on sustainability. 2 of you have already owned up the building code and mid-rise, that is 5-story construction research. 2 of you will own the research on mid-rise 5-story structural systems. 2 of you, no more than 2 of you, should own the building enclosure research topic, and 2 of you need to prepare the mapping, the documentation of the photographs that comprise this neighborhood and build the SketchUp site model. Now that's totaling 14 students because I thought that's what we had. I think there's actually only 13 students, so one of these groups may only have 1 student.
May I have to know, may I know who picked what? I just got Courtney.
Yes, so
I
will
Courtney's
say,
email.
Yes, I will say that Courtney wants to do item 4, aging baby boomer population. And I recall Eric and Joshua, guys, correct me if I'm wrong, Eric and Joshua wanted to do number 6, building codes. So
could I volunteer to do sustainability?
yes,
Paige?
who's speaking? Paige?
Yep.
Okay.
Lynn here. Could I volunteer to do topic number 2? Detroit Future City Framework?
Yes. I love the way this is going. I'm gonna buy a Powerball ticket tonight. Oh, wait a minute, it was already won, so it's not gonna have any.
Gonna do the next
Go ahead.
hybrid building.
One more time.
Andrew and Rasha, we were gonna do the mixed-use hybrid buildings.
Lovely.
Carmen, the city of Detroit, number 1.
Gotcha. Wow, that'll be good. Carmen, where are you from?
Nancy? I am from Rochester Hills in Michigan.
Good. So I love that you're kind of close to Detroit, and and gonna own that one. So, Miss Courtney or Miss Rasha, could I ask one of you to document the names to each of these research topics, and then share that with me in an email? You can fight it out, but I'm not writing anything down right now.
Can you copy me on this as well, please?
Of course, yeah. Make sure that.
Yeah, I need to write them down. So can you please repeat that? So page picked sustainability, which is number, I don't have the
number 5.
Number 5, okay.
And then
Louis?
Joshua and Eric,
Joshua.
number 6.
Okay, I wrote this down, which is code.
Yeah.
Who else?
And I think
Back for a second, please.
Courtney picked 4.
4.
Go ahead. I interrupted you.
I sent an email to the class earlier on Alex and Rasha and Andrew's behalf. Alex had already stated earlier today that she wanted to work on City of Detroit. And I believe Andrew and Rasha are already doing that next week.
That's fine. I can pick something else.
So I'm reading the text. I like how cordial and professional you all are being. Let me just continue to summarize. City of Detroit was going to be Carmen. Is that correct?
Yes.
And then that's number 1. And then number 2 was going to be Lynn in Ottawa. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. And okay, and then I'm reading Alex wants to do building enclosure innovations.
That's number.
So that is item number 8.
If I could do the 1, 2 enclosed building enclosed innovation.
Say that once more, please.
Number 8, 2 building enclosed innovations. Nancy.
And this is Wu?
Yes.
Okay.
Nancy just selected it.
Okay, I didn't get any of that.
I didn't get either any of these.
I can restate them if you want. I think I got them.
Okay, go ahead.
Nancy is number 8 with edit.
Nancy's 8. Lynn is 2. Alex is 1. Courtney is 4. Josh and Eric are 6. Myself and Andrew are mixed use, which is number 3. So we just need Wu and Paige and Carmen.
Paige is gonna do sustainability, number 5, I think.
Yep.
Yes.
I'll take number 3 then. Mixed use hybrid buildings.
That's already,
this is Carmen.
That's already taken.
That's taken.
All right, what's
So
left?
there's the model that no one's owning the model.
I'm not great with
I'll do the
SketchUp, so I'll pass.
Okay. So I do feel like Carmen.
If you
Carmen
guys,
asked for item number 1. So do we do have some overlaps here.
I have a list up of everything people are taking. If you want to look at it.
I'm reading Louis wants to take number 7. So Louis is taking that. And where is the list? Is that something you want to screen share?
I'm screen sharing right now. It's also
I'm not getting it. Wait, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Mark, if you click on Michael's picture.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you. I wasn't sure who was talking. Thank you, Michael. So thanks for doing that. So I'm just going to start at the top from Michael's list. So he has common for item 1. Alex, are you good if we let her do that?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Alex is number 8, I think, right?
Yeah, I'm okay.
Alex and Nancy, number 8. Yep. Alex and Wu. Okay.
Alex and Wu are for number 8.
So Nancy is going to take what?
Michael is doing the site model. Thank you, Michael.
Is that a 2-person job?
I'll talk to you in a minute about that, Michael. Lewis is doing number 7. Joshua and Eric are doing number 6. Paige. Courtney is doing, could you move that back, please? Thank you. Paige is doing 5, sustainability. Courtney is doing aging in place, baby boomers, Rasha and Andrew. Thank you. Can you share that? So, okay, can you share that, Michael? Of course you can. What you ought to do, Michael, is create a shared folder here in Google Documents. Thank you. And share that with all of the class, and then they have access to all of these things. I will also say that there are things that I have file dump there for you, and then you can rely on it or look at it at any time. And you know, if there is anything else along the sort of journey of this class that I need to sort of add to the pile of files, I'll do that as well. Michael, can you send an email? Because I will, well, maybe.
I believe I shared it.
Never mind. I clicked on it in chat. So I just opened it. Excellent. So you can close your list now, and I think everyone has that. I'm glad this worked out so efficiently. Thank you.
Mike,
go ahead.
I was going to say I can help with the pictures for number 9.
Great. I mean, obviously, you know, let me just explain that a little bit more. It's a job site right now. Some of the streets actually may be closed off when you're there. So being able to document it completely and thoroughly may be somewhat problematic, but here's the rub. There's not a lot there. You know, I mean, it's mostly vacant land. So there are pictures that you can find on the net and that are on the web, and there are pictures that you can make when you go there. But in order to establish a convincing sampling of the context for people like, you know, Nancy and Luis and Alex, who may have forgotten what Brush Park looks like, you know, this will be helpful. It won't be like the exercise playing out if you were doing a building in Ann Arbor or New York City. But and then the SketchUp model, I may be able to help you on that as well. We may have something at the office. No promises that I can share with you, because this is a really important component, because you all are going to drop your models into the base that Michael has created. So because that's what you'll use as your the platform to do your sort of work from, right, and the renderings from. So it will be helpful to have that as accurate as possible. And I know Michael well enough to know that he can do that for us.
Can you share the Google Drive with me, please? I don't have an access. I just opened my Google Drive here, and I don't see it. If you please can add me, I would be greatly appreciated.
I just clicked on it, Ash, from the chat box.
Okay, just a sec.
If you click on that chat icon on the left of your screen, the image of everyone will get smaller, and you'll see a column of thing going on.
Is it showcase or I'm sorry?
Michael added a link there.
Showcase, screen share, and the first one is still opening here.
The top one, the blue icon, is chat. Click on that.
It's opening. Okay. I don't know why the computer's kind of slow here. I just went to my Google Drives and I didn't find it.
Okay, Michael can send that along in maybe a separate email, just to make everyone.
I think somebody needs to add my email address or something to it.
What's your email?
Yash, I sent you an email.
Sure.
I shared it to you.
Okay, just a sec. Okay.
If you're in Google Drive, you have to click on Shared with Me, and then you should see it, and then you can right-click it and click Add to Drive.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Mike. Shared with me. Where is that?
So cool.
That's a folder, right?
Yeah.
Add to my drive. Okay.
Are we good?
Okay. So that's just the file or the folder. I mean the comprehensive design, not just the file.
Yeah.
Well, if you click on Module 1 Research, that folder, it has 2 documents in it. It has the Excel sign-up list that Michael just showed us in the screen share, and then it has the document for research topics.
Mark, it's Josh. While we're waiting, can you tell me the difference between building codes and mid-rise construction versus structural systems of mid-rise buildings?
Yeah, so the structural systems research is talking about wood, steel, hollow core precast concrete, post-tension concrete, the structural frame, and how that achieves building form, and a lot of these things are overlapping. So that's why I think your question is actually a good one, because it's talking about those overlaps and those subtleties and maybe redundancies in the research. But it's talking about the frame of the building and how one goes about designing a building with that frame in terms of floor to floor, in terms of floor thickness, in terms of column spacings, in terms of shear walls, all of those sort of structural aspects that that play out when we design a mixed-use building. Building codes are the stuff that, give me 2 cappuccinos or 2 espressos and I'll just become rabid about it. Building codes is a very rich and interesting, I'm terribly interested in it, aspect of the building design that talks about fire separation, vertical in terms of shaft assemblies, horizontal in terms of floor and ceiling assemblies, separations of the assemblies between uses. It talks about egress and travel distance. It talks about dead-end corridors, talks about fire suppression, as described in the chapter in NFPA 13, and it also talks about you know, the Department of Energy and the requirements, the ASHRAE requirements. It talks about, I mean, type A and type B units, which deal with chapter 11, which is the accessibility. You know, in apartment buildings like this, Joshua, we have to have so many units that are outright barrier-free / ADA units, you know, with grab bars and 60-inch turning radius within them, 3-foot doors, that kind of thing. And those are type A units. Then we have to have all other units that have to be type B units, which are essentially what I like to call convertible units that could be converted into a ADA unit if needed. So, you know, it's and the energy code that play out in the design of a building. Does that help?
Yes and no. I'll send you an email after class.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I think there's going to be things that kind of lay over each other, eclipse each other in those regards because they influence one another. But yeah, I'm happy to go offline to do that or in a separate conversation. Any other questions?
Yes, this is Carmen.
Hi, Carmen.
So regarding the research, how would you like for it to be presented? Is it just verbally? Is it a Word document?
Oh, great question. Great question. I don't know. I think that's something that you all have to design. I think this. What's the format of it? Did you notice, Carmen? And I'm picking on you because you raised this question. Did you notice the documents that I did? I'm holding them up, right?
Yes.
Right? Aren't they beautiful?
They are.
Thank you. So, yeah.
I can.
They got to be like that.
I can answer this question. We usually do the research phase in comp design on an 11x17 format. Yeah, we do, just for consistency, we do receive, of course, the digital files, but if you want to print something, post it and discuss it, that's an 11x17 format, nice and colored. And I'm going to post for you guys right now just an example of the climate consultant, just the climate study. We do it separately, and because we assign different like one person group, but here we have it combined with sustainability. So I'll post right now.
And while he's doing
nice example on the Blackboard.
I love the idea. I love the idea that it's an 11x17 because that's the landscape format that works so well for our online window, right? It allows you to use the whole field. It allows you to put a lot of information on one sheet. But, you know, you're all architects in training. You're all gifted thinkers. You can take complex information, data, and intelligence and give it a form or a legibility that is concise and pleasing to the eye, just like I did for the site plan package. I expect that you will want to, as a class, make a cohesive package. So someone ought to think about what that might look like and create the template for it so that all of you can drop your data and your research into said template that ultimately becomes a, you know, PDF that you all can share via Google Drive and review online during the pinup, right? That can be an InDesign file for now as the raw working file format for this exercise, but yeah, I'm the client right now. I'm waiting for you all to create that new masterpiece. So that's a great question. Thinking about the wedding and how we get there. I love that you're doing that. Anyone else?
Hi, Mark.
I'm sharing the. Can everybody see it?
Let me go to you. Where did Ash go? There it is. Yes.
That's
beautiful.
This is the climate consultant outcome. These are the graphs of the sun, the ratios of the building, wind rows. That's of course it's going to be for Detroit in this case. That's Wyandotte. I think that's Detroit as well. Yep, Detroit Metropolitan Airport. That's the psychrometric chart with the main strategies for.
It's 11 by 17, HVAC, but it's pretty close. It's a landscape format.
HVAC. That's the HVAC strategies here. That does have these percentages. It stands for the main strategies that you need to achieve thermal comfort. Okay.
Great.
I'll make it available for you guys on the Blackboard.
Thank you, Ash. Who else had a question? I think I interrupted somebody.
Sorry, I had a question, I guess, about length of the presentation or number of pages, or that will be dictated by the topic we have. If there's any expectation.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be. I mean, and in the case of like number 9, there's not really a presentation that's happening. There's maybe the photographic documentation that will play out, and that may be just a few plates, but the bulk of that work led by Michael will be the actual execution of a SketchUp model, for instance, that he shares with you. So I think it's sort of pertinent to the research theme or the research topic. My goal is always to, in the office, is to say as much as I can in as few words as possible, or to be concise. So I think always the goal is concision, and to make that content legible. And again, you're using this information not only because it's teach other people, so that everyone becomes an expert on your topic, right?
Thank you.
The reason.
Any other questions?
The reason I picked this 11 by 17 as well is that research is a part of NAB criteria. So if we need to retain some of your work for NAB accreditation,
sure,
would like to have it just ready to be printed on 11 by 17 and just show it. So
yes. Yeah, so it works well in an analog format on a
display,
like on the wall.
Yeah.
For a NAB visit, but it also works extremely well for the as a PDF file that we can screen share here online. And honestly, I think that's a great format for the rest of the semester. Great. Anyone else? Okay. I guess the last thing I say before I hand the session now over to Ash is that, again, I'm really excited about teaching this class again, but it's also really not just because I've done it before, but it's also a class that I've not done in so long that it will be brand new. I love this change. Don't get me wrong, I love teaching the Advanced Design Studio. I love working with the graduate students. The work is at such a high level and of high quality and high caliber that it's real easy to end up like, you know, grooving on that sugar. I really do value that. But I also see how my own background and Ash's background is so in sync with the sort of precepts and expectations of this Comp Design Studio that I'm actually a really pertinent adjunct to teach this class. So I think it was brilliant on the dean's part and Jim's part and Dale's part to ask me to come into the undergraduate format and stay in the online realm because of the popularity that it has here at Lawrence Tech, but also because of, you know, just this idea of sharing my expertise with more of you. So I'm really welcoming that, and I'm completely stunned that we have people from really far away places. My goal is to work very closely with you as well, not to make you feel disenfranchised or, you know, literally south of the border. I don't want that to happen. I am very excited about the reach that we've been able to input as highly important, because that means that maybe your undergraduate experiences came from a different university, and when that happens, that ratchets up the quality in our studios, to be sure. Finally, and I hope you can tell from my sort of energy, I love this idea of working in Brush Park, in Detroit, working with these other architects and the designs that they've developed for City Modern Detroit. So it'll be really cool for you from a sort of a theoretical construct to think about your work in terms of insertion and resonance, right? And responding to a context that is, quite honestly, emerging. So it's going to mean that you're going to have to learn a little bit about their work now, and that's why I've added them to the program brief, so that you know who they are and you can look them up very quickly. And then finally, I have a list of like amazing architects. I'm going to type it up and share it with you. It's probably 15 or 20 people. Kind of looks like this right now, but it's an amazing list of architects that are doing this kind of work. And I encourage you to, when you get this, to begin looking at their websites, maybe bookmark them for now, and then certainly maybe become kind of a fan of theirs, start following them on Instagram or on Twitter. Many of these architects actually tweet about their work and about what they're doing, what they're lecturing. Actually, one of the best sites is LOHAS. Another phenomenal one is with David Baker Architects. David does this kind of work all day long, but in San Francisco. So yeah, maybe you'll develop some new friends, and maybe these are firms that if you set your sights high enough that you start to apply to after you graduate. And I'd be delighted if that were to happen. If there are no other questions about the class, this online experiment that we're embarking on, the program, this first research module, I will suggest that we take a 5 or 10 minute break so that Ash can begin his conversation with you in the lab. Ash, what's your pleasure? Unless we've covered everything.
Actually, I don't have, to be honest, I don't have much to say. I met with them and introduced the idea of the lab. I reiterated it today that it's a combination that support their architecture design and schemes. Yep. What I'm going to do is just to tell you that this research module, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to modify my schedule based on marks. So I kind of give a leverage. Oh my God, like more time for this research. No, we're gonna probably share even in grading it. So this will constitute a 20% of the lab assignments. So there are some people who will be working on the technicals. So I'll post for everybody about sustainability, structures, codes, and envelope or high efficiency, high performance building envelope. I'm just gonna provide you some, like a page or two of useful websites, exactly like the architects' names that Mark just provided. This is all what I'm gonna do. Just modify a little bit the schedule, okay, to match Mark's, so that we are in sync with each other. This will make 20%. We'll grade it together. So I'll consider everybody's participating in this research. So I'm not going to single out people who are just working in technology, but I'm just going to give you a little bit more of a hand in addition to what Marx has given you in terms of the names or websites, and that would be it. And
right. And conversely, we will rely on Ash for the sort of technical content and guidance. And likewise, I think you can rely on me for the more cultural and historical and, let's say, more pure architectural sort of virtues of this research phase. Together, you know, we're good alone, but we're better together. So I love how this class is structured, and how I forecast it's going to be a successful one. So I'm really looking forward to that.
We just divided the work today between myself and Dan, for example, who's going to grade what in terms of research. But it's a grade that counts towards because it's a shared phase. Yeah. Between the lab and the studio. So again, I'm very flexible, Mark. You can comment on. Of course, I'm not going to be as expert as you have been in the city for so long. I'm living in Ann Arbor, so I know very little about the city and what's going on, except the broad titles in the newspaper, newsletters that comes, you know, from us. What June Kim is doing in Detroit studio, stuff like that. So I'm not as you know every single thing about the city. So I'm gonna take your wisdom on again the grades of the site, the aging population, missing middle housing,
right, and any of those other themes.
So, and I'm gonna give you my input on just the building codes. I'm gonna send you guys people who are working in codes. Those are whoever number 6, Eric and Josh. Okay, I'm gonna give you a nice matrix for the codes to benefit the whole class. Okay, in addition, some websites for new building materials in the envelope and the structural system.
Great.
So
thanks, Courtney, for volunteering to create that template. The last thing that I'd say is we're talking a little bit about grades, is that for the 3 benchmarks, they will be graded, right? So I will create a grade sheet that has a matrix on it that I will share with each of you, and you will see the categories for that we will grade to, and you will see that before each benchmark, and then we will give you the sort of I will give comments on those grade sheets after each review. So one thing that I'm kind of committed to and pledged to is giving you as much feedback as is possible within the sort of confines of the of that grade sheet and within the context of that benchmark. So you will get a grade sheet from me for each benchmark, including the final one. And at the end of the term, you will be able to sort of see and follow the documentation of your sort of grade as it moves along. Okay. Are there any other questions? So if you all have your chat icon active, you can see that Courtney has volunteered, has actually started to create the InDesign file for you to do that in, and she'll share that with you. And then Courtney, when you have something that you have sort of evolved, maybe if you could share it with Ash and with me, I'd like to look at it and maybe give you some copy edit suggestions if necessary. But otherwise, it's going to be lovely.
Thank you, Courtney.
Okay, I think.
Oh,
go ahead.
I'm looking into which version I have of InDesign because I am using InDesign.
Okay, thanks. I know the one I have here is older, but I can make sure that we're all in sync.
Okay.
Super. Again, these classes are recorded on YouTube. I will send you the link for them so that you can revisit them. They are live streamed live and while they happen. So, you know, if someone's like completely bored out of their mind and they stumble across this stream, they could watch it. They can't be in it, but they could watch it. So you just never know. That's why I try to keep my longshoreman vocabulary to a minimum, because, you know, maybe the provost is bored tonight. Maybe she does not want to watch the Little League World Series like I do and is actually watching this class. So I have to be on good behavior, but I do slip a lot. And if anybody here knows me, you already know that to be the case.
No wonder you got the award of teaching with technology. I'm just impressed.
Yeah,
you know,
right.
Yeah,
obviously that missed all of that.
Live on YouTube.
Yeah, that's scary.
Listen to it.
Scary. Yeah, and I tell you, watching it again, watching some of these classes over again, like I encourage you to do, is really sobering. But that's for another conversation. So I'll close the class out. I'll let you all go now. Ash, you're included in that exit, unless any one of you want to visit with me now, like issue or concern or whatever. I'll wait around till the very last person leaves, and then I'll close out the class. Until next Tuesday, have a productive weekend. There's a lot to do. There's a lot to take in. There's a lot to read, along with the recommended textbooks, particularly the David Maraniss book. These first few weeks will be like drinking water from a fire hose. So I'm warning you now, as I told someone earlier, in the week, fasten your seatbelt. It's going to be a fun ride, and it's going to go very fast. So I'll say good night now, and hang around if anybody wants to chat. Thanks, everyone. See you Tuesday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye now.
Mark, I actually have a question if no one else stays till the end.
Okay, come on and stay. Pull up a chair. Who is this?
This is Carmen.
Hey, Carmen, let me pull your. Oh, there you are. I haven't clicked on your icon till now. How are you, Carmen? You're the one in Rochester Hills?
I'm sorry?
You're the one in Rochester Hills?
Correct, yes. So
Great.
my question was regarding the city of Detroit.
Yes.
So I'm very close to Detroit. I always go during the weekends. Is this something that you would recommend a certain, like a web page or with the city of Detroit, or is it more like going on site and collecting data from there, or is there a certain page I should be looking at?
So no.
Like collecting materials that discuss and provide the data.
Yours is actually a hard one.
Okay.
Yours is you thought that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yours is a difficult one. You may need you need to take in a lot of information, and it may not knit together very linearly or very clearly. It may be kind of like buckshot, you know, a gun that fires pellets, it just sprays pellets everywhere, right? You may be presenting your research and your data in that fashion. For example, like I think the history of urban form in Brush Park is particularly startling. It shows initially a very dense population in the 1800s, and then with density. And then it shows us today a neighborhood that's completely obliterated and decimated. The history of you know, the figure ground of the Brush Park neighborhood is an important one.
Okay.
I think you need to be able to summarize and talk about the character of historic Brush Park, the quality of the place. How is it that Brush Park is unique? What makes it authentic? Not easy stuff to research. A racial dimension to it. And that is articulated in a very moving passage in the David Maraniss book. Brush Park was initially the home of Detroit's wealthiest lumber, fur, and banking barons and their families, right? They built these beautiful stone and brick mansions. No two are alike. All are different styles. They are exuberant. They are feminine. They are massive. They all included alleys and carriage houses. They were built in the 1800s when people had horses, and the dude that took care of the horses lived above the horses in the carriage house with his wife, and she took care of the house and did the laundry, and you know, like that was the life. So talking about all of that is kind of in play here, and can be discussed. Gentrification, a naughty, nasty, awful topic, is in play here. What happens in a neighborhood that was initially for Detroit's wealthiest, that became overtaken by Detroit's poorest, who had nowhere else to move into because they couldn't buy property, because the FHA wouldn't loan money to black families. You know, like it gets really, really messy. So what happens as that plays out, and we now have white young individuals like you moving into these neighborhoods that were never meant for you initially, right? So like that's a question. What is the what is the question of city planning? I'm kind of reading my list to you. City planning in Detroit changed in May of 2015. Carmen, we have Maurice Cox, who is the new mayor. I'm sorry, the new planner for the city of Detroit. He was the mayor of Charlottesville. He was on faculty at the Harvard Graduate School of Design and at Tulane University. He brought in 30 people who are architects, planners, urban designers, and graphic designers, and he has mobilized them to recast the entire planning department so that all of the city gets the benefit of good design, not just Brush Park. So maybe some discussion about and research about him.
Okay,
The
I did
David
not know
Moranis
that. That
book.
is very interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Gosh, the 1967 riots, which we call the revolt or the uprising, completely changed and moved the needle from Detroit as a vibrant Paris of the Midwest in the early 60s, as discussed in David Moranis's book, into the wasteland that you see today. What was that all about? And why is that important? And what do you think was the root of the riot? There's also like the Burton Historical Society and the Detroit Public Library that have websites that you can go to and drill into and find historic photographs of Brush Park. And just a year ago, there was a big article in the Detroit Free Press on Brush Park when City Modern Detroit was announced, when it broke ground, when it went under construction. And that site, the Free Press site, has that article, and it has tons of photographs, all of course black and white, but it shows what it was compared to what the City Modern Detroit site is showing what it will be. So that's worth looking at. It might help for you, Carmen, to go to the City Modern Detroit Sales Center.
Okay, I was actually on the
see
website.
The rendering.
Uh-huh.
And see the model that Dean Zoyce built and see what it looks like and take some pictures of the A3 building and share that with your teammates.
Okay, go to the Modern City. Yeah, this is very helpful.
Did you do your undergraduate at Lawrence Tech?
I did not. So I was
Tell
born
me about
in,
you. Are you a graduate student then?
I am, yes.
Okay, tell me more.
So I was born in Mexico, but moved to.
Because I don't recognize you.
No, it's actually my first year. So I started in the spring, and I thought that my classmates were talking about you, but you said that you just started. I was taking research methods, and two of my classmates, Elizabeth and Stephanie, they were talking about comprehensive design.
Yeah.
And the projects they were doing, and at the end they showed us their like entire packet. But yeah. I now thinking about it, it might not have been you. It might have been in class, not online. So
yeah,
that's where I heard about the comprehensive design.
Yeah, so I've been teaching the Advanced Studios for years, the Advanced Design Studios, which is the graduate studio. But I think because you came from a different institution, you're required to take this class to demonstrate, competency,
yes.
so that you can move right up and into the critical practice sequence in the summer, and then the Advanced Design Studio 1 and 2. So I'm not here to stop you. I'm here to help you do that.
Yeah.
But if I'm invited to teach Advanced Design Studio again, it probably wouldn't be until next year at this time. So maybe we'll have a chance to sort of work together then.
Yes. So grew up in Bloomfield, was obsessed with Mexico at 17 years old. I was like, I wanted to go to Mexico. So I studied. It was a 5-year bachelor degree it's the northern part of Mexico. It's called Torreon, very close to Monterrey. So I studied
Sure.
there for 4 years and then 1 year in Valladolid, Spain, where I focused more on
Wow.
the conservation, restoration, rehabilitation of historic buildings. And then I took a 5-year break trying to gather up some money to pay for my graduate.
I understand.
Yeah, so here I am. I graduated 2012 and finally getting into the whole master's and excited
Yeah, Carmen, is your undergraduate a Bachelor of Arts in Architecture?
Bachelor of Architecture. So I'm a certified architect in Mexico, but of course the construction and everything is much different. Everything's built in
It's a
concrete.
different. The architect is also the builder there.
Yes, so the architect is the builder, but never the structural. You never worry
Yeah.
about the structure,
Yeah.
ever. So really, I had like
I
a
did a
physics
house in
class and a
Cabo San
concrete
Lucas.
class. Yeah.
So I know about that dynamic, and so I appreciate that. But so did you go to like high school here in Bloomfield Hills?
I did, yes. So kindergarten and elementary, middle school, high school. I went to
High
Lasser, Bloomfield.
Oh, Lasser.
Yeah, Lasser.
Yeah, I know Lasser.
Which
I
is
live in Royal Oak,
Bloomfield
so I
Hills.
know.
Oh, perfect. Yeah.
Right. It's a new high school. Okay, so that's terrific. So are you kind of in a more sort of stretched out master's track then, because you need to take this class and maybe one or two other like structures classes or other
I do need to
compulsory
take advanced structures, and I've already taken a couple of the electives and research methods. So
Yep.
this is my
Okay.
only class to actually step into the advanced studios.
Yep.
And I work full-time at a construction company called Petrucci Homes. We specialize in new builds.
Good. Where are they? Are they in Birmingham?
We are in Bloomfield Hills. So right on Telegraph Road, there's 3 super large homes with like lines outside, the one next to it.
Uh-huh.
So it's
Okay.
just residential.
Yeah, so a building that a couple of buildings I did that you, because you're local, you could go look at, that you could see as comparable, right, to our project in terms of scale and massing, or in terms of mixed uses, would be the Willets in Birmingham on Willets Road, a curvy stone facade building.
Oh, of course, yes.
Do you know it?
Yes.
Right. Okay, so that one, and then District Lofts.
I have not heard about
off of Eaton, south of the Preserve and south of the Big Rock Chop House along the Grand Trunk Railroad.
And what city
So
is this
that
in?
those are both in Birmingham.
Oh, both in Birmingham. Okay.
And then in Royal Oak, the scale is much, much larger, but it's a complex mixed-use building that I did at Main Street and 11 Mile, called Main North Lofts, and it's the 9-story building there.
Okay, 9-story. I will check them out. All right, and then
Do you have any ambitions to work in an architect's office?
I do, yes. So kind of like straight out of, I graduated
I'm gonna
2012.
stop broadcasting this right now.